When you'd like to be on the speaking list, hold up your placards like this so we can see your name. You'll be added to the list. If you'd like to make a point or a motion, hold up your placards like this and the speaker will recognize you.
All right, with that, we're going to call to order at 6:32 p.m. today, and we're going to move into attendance. When your name is called, please, by our clerk, please stand and say here. All right? Further ado.
Senator Alabala. Senator Cannon. Senator Kaplash.
Here.
Senator Crow. Senator DeMora.
Here.
Senator Douglas.
Here.
Senator Earl.
Here.
Senator Fernando. Senator Potterwalla. Senator Frank. Senator Glassell. Senator Goss. Senator Howie. Senator Hooker. Senator Hassan. Senator Kowalski. Senator Knowlton. Senator Lau. Here. Senator Mackel. Here. Senator Molina. Here. Senator McKinney. Senator McCormick. Here. Senator Mishra. Senator Moore.
Here.
Senator Nate. Senator Nandel. Senator O'Connor. Senator Odell.
Here.
Senator Okine. Senator Pan. Senator Patel. Senator Pratt. Senator Rayakota. Senator Reynolds.
Here.
Senator Roach. Senator Sacramento. Senator Residency. Senator Testa. Senator Tigger. Senator Botina.
Here.
And Senator Sansowitz.
Here.
Senator Worsler.
Yeah, you just go.
Student Development Chair. Student Services Chair.
Here.
Academic Affairs Chair. External Affairs Chair. Vice Presidential Chief of Staff. Here. Public Relations. Executive Advocacy Consultant. Chief Justice. Speaker of the Senate Pro. Comptroller. Here. Vice President Gallagher. And exit.
Oh, this is your seat.
Oh, right. Oh, sorry.
Ex officio.
Ex officio Kaiser.
Here.
Ex officio Ho. Ex officio Derry. Here. Ex officio Tran.
All right. Seeing as now we have quorum, we will now move into public comment. Quick note before we head into it, we will have 4 presentations today, the first 4 items, and then after that we move into individual public comment. All individual public comment will be limited to 2 minutes apiece. the 4 presentations will be exempt from that. Without further ado, we'll move into the presentation of Michael Gilbert, Nathan First, and Eleanor Daugherty. I apologize. Regarding on-campus residency requirement.
Good evening. I'm Michael Gilbert. I serve as UConn's Vice President for Student Affairs. I'm joined this evening by Associate Vice President and Dean of Students, Dr. Eleanor Daugherty. Nathan first sends his regrets. He actually is away this evening, and we're going to move on with our presentation and our discussion this evening without Nathan's assistance. I want to, first of all, thank leadership from the USG for granting us time on your busy agenda. It's our intention tonight to inform you of a policy change that will be implemented at the university that will affect students, some students at the university, beginning next fall semester. And we want to share with you a little bit of background and what our thinking is in implementing this new policy. And if it pleases the Senate, we certainly will remain so that we can have an opportunity to hear your comments, to address your questions, and benefit from your advice and guidance on this matter. And you'll give us instruction and guidance on it. So to begin, like many universities around the country, it is our intention to implement what I would consider to be a selective and focused residency requirement for new students who enroll at the university beginning next fall semester. And we'll share information in tonight's presentation that highlights for you what best practice is regarding this policy at other universities that are similar to our institution and our peer institutions. But our intention is to work closely to ensure that our new traditional freshmen and students who come to the STORES campus beginning next fall as change of campus students are focused and required to live on campus for their first year at this university. So in the interest of having different voice and having some flow to the presentation, I'm going to ask Ellie to join me at the podium, and she will introduce some of the first few slides and provide background information, and then after a few minutes I'll step back up to the podium and bring our presentation to closure. Okay? Thank you.
This is my favorite person in the universe, the one who presses the buttons on the slides, because I think you all know you're smarter than me, and working through slides is very challenging. So thanks for taking the time to talk with us today. And one of the reasons behind pursuing a residency requirement that we knew in speaking with our peers wasn't a foreign concept. It was something that we felt was advantageous to the entering class and to their well-being and support at UConn, was the strength of the program right now. And I know all of you know our residential program because you lived in it at some point. But the program is designed to make sure a student has wraparound support. You know, I often talk about kind of the visible and invisible support that we have for our students. And residential life really provides a lot of both the visible support through the programming and community development that they do. And you know, the laundry room is a popular place for hanging out and discussing. But also for the invisible support that we've, and Nicely and I spent a lot of time talking about that in class last spring. But also for the invisible support. Students aren't perfect. College can be a challenging time, particularly during your first year here. And the reason why we staff these halls, both with RA staff and with full-time professional staff, is that we have staff who are trained and able to intervene and support students during some of the more critical and challenging times that they face. You know, I was speaking with Residency today about a case where we needed to have 15 different points of interaction with the student to support them as they navigate some difficult times. That is a norm for us, and it is part of the invisible support that we're able to provide for students by having professional staff on the floors, by having an excellent RA staff. Do we have any RAs here? Well, we should. And bringing that together to let our students know how much we care for them and how much the university supports them, not just on a 9-to-5 schedule, but on a 24/7 schedule. And then there is a revenue benefit to the university by having more students and residents on campus. And I've shown here, just in sort of increments of 100 students, what the university benefits from that. And And I think no one knows that better than USG, who joins us at the Capitol annually to try to at least maintain the state support that we get. We need to be looking at other sources of revenue, and this is a way for us to do that. So the next slide puts in context about how this outlook of having a residency requirement at UConn compares among your peers. So I would ask, how many of you have friends who were required to live on campus during their first year who didn't go to UConn? We found the same thing. So when we looked at peers and the schools that we compete with for students, the schools that we share locations with and regional affinities with, we found having a one-year requirement wasn't that foreign a concept. In fact, we were a little bit behind the curve in that it had been in place at a multitude of institutions. Where we would go astray is looking at a two-year requirement. So telling students that during not just their first year, but during their second year on campus, they would need to reside in campus housing. I think all of you would agree with me that there's a difference between the community we're building, the identity that we're forming with the university during our first year here, that's very different in the second year. And so looking at a two-year requirement was something that we decided against doing. We wouldn't be outliers. I think the norm is really to look at one-year requirements for students. But we wanted to make sure we asked the question of second-year requirements. And then the next slide, we are rocking this, looks at sort of what we're going to look at in gain of students and where we're really focusing on increasing student participation in the residential system. So first, new freshmen, we think we're going to find about a net increase of about 75 students. We're going to talk a little bit about the students who would not be included in a residency requirement. So certainly an example like a student living in Mansfield would probably not want to live on campus and would ask for an exception from that. So that number may seem a little lower than you would initially imagine. Change of campus students that we would require, and I don't know if we have any change of campus students here, but I know one of the frequent things I hear is the need to be fully matriculated into the UConn experience, not just the academic experience, but the co-curricular experience outside of the classroom as well as the residential life experience that we offer. So that would increase by about 175 students. And then we are speaking with athletics that are athletes who come to campus fully funded or partially funded to some degree, and having that be an expectation of those athletes that as we allocate university resources for their ability to help UConn be successful, we would have an expectation that they live in campus housing. Okay? I think Mike is going to talk a little bit more about those exemptions.
So a point that I'll make about the previous slide is that, as you can see, and as you would construe from this, the great majority of our students who are in these categories already live on campus. Right? The percentage of traditional freshmen who live on campus are in the high 90 percentile. And the 75 count of students that we think, based on this year's enrollment figures and residency choices, will largely be international students. And we think it's particularly important for us to consider this kind of policy for traditional new freshmen beginning next year, because we do think that there are educational and academic advantages for students living on campus, especially students who are assimilating into this culture and want to be part of the U.S. higher ed experience. And so we do think that this is a very thoughtful and very sound educational program. And so again, the yield that we anticipate from this year's on-campus housing numbers to next year would be about 250, maybe as many as 300 additional students living on campus. And that actually aligns well with the number of vacancies that we've tracked in the residence halls over the course of the last 2 fall semesters. At 10th day audit 2 years ago, we found that we had almost 400 vacancies in the residence hall system. And this year we're tracking about 50 more vacancies than the prior year. So we do have the capacity to house students on campus. And again, we think that the students that we would be inviting and requiring to live on campus would have an educational and academic gain by having a more intimate experience living on campus from the start of their experience at the university. So now I want to highlight for you some of our thinking as it relates to how we would approach reviewing any petitions or appeals of this policy, and what we would consider to be very sound reason for us granting an exemption. And these exemption standards or criteria comport very well and closely with other schools that we affiliate with, like Northeastern University and the University of Vermont, and other schools that we compete with for students every year. So obviously, students who are traditional commuters, and by that we mean students who live with a guardian or their parents or a parent, or someone else who is responsible for them personally, and within a reasonable commuting distance, which we're considering roughly 60 miles or a little over a 1 hour transportation or travel time, we would obviously grant an exemption, because we would say that is a traditional and sound reason for someone not being required to live on campus. And we have many of those students already at the university who make that choice. Individuals who are 21 years old and older, we would not compel to live on campus. Anyone who has served in the military and is a veteran and enjoys that status, we would not compel to live on campus. Students who are married or in those kinds of committed relationships or have dependents, we would grant a waiver to. Students who have medical conditions that are incompatible with living in that kind of environment, we would obviously consider that as a sound reason for granting them an exemption. We would consider religious practices and identities. We would consider non-degree students, students who demonstrate an unmet financial need that this would create a burden for, we would not compel them to live on campus. Students who had other personal circumstances like dietary restrictions or needs that are better served living off campus, we would consider. And students who would be participating in off-campus programs elsewhere and around the state or around the country would obviously not required to live on campus. Our goal with these exemptions is to approach them with the benefit of students in mind. So we will err on the side of being granting more latitude and siding with the students who petition for the opportunity to be waived from this requirement. Because we understand that living on campus is a very sensitive, personal, and private matter. But we do think for many students this is sound policy, and if they don't meet these circumstances, we would have the opportunity to talk to them and entertain and view their individual petition in the case for being granted an exemption. And we will work closely with Residence Life staff to ensure that we have adequate staffing and staff is trained to obviously work on this in a sound and prudent way with our students. And we can advance the slide. So we've given some thought to also just some internal considerations that we have to work on with this policy. We've worked very closely with Nathan First, who is the Vice President who oversees enrollment planning and enrollment management, and is responsible for admissions work at the university. And Nathan is prepared to work with his staff to announce this to all students who are applicants for admission to the university for next year. So this will be part of the admission materials for any students who are becoming newly to the university or who would be seeking a change of campus assignment to the Soares campus. And Nathan is confident that his staff will be able to communicate this effectively to any of our new students. We also know that we have to consider seriously the condition of some of our residences. Our residence halls are older, and we have a growing list of deferred maintenance and just quality of life circumstances that are growing and presenting. And so we know that with this, we're going to have to really focus on investing more time and more funds in improving the residence halls. It's one thing if we were offering everybody the best housing accommodation, but that's not going to be the case. We know that there's great variety among the quality and type of housing that we offer students, so we're going to have to commit resources to improving the housing stock broadly and generally. And we know that we're going to have to vet this with student leadership. I think we mentioned that in this slide as well, and that's the purpose for our visit here today. And so, again, this will not affect any of the students in the room personally, and students who are currently enrolled and active on the UConn Stores campus. It would affect a count of UConn students who are studying at some of our regional campuses perhaps come next year. And we think that could be as many as about 150 students. And we know that any newly admitted students who choose to enroll at the university and don't meet one of these considerations for an exemption, it can possibly affect as well. All told, it will probably affect about 250 new students to the Stores campus next year. And if it pleases the Senate, Ellie and I would be happy to entertain questions or hear your advice and your comments or any suggestions. We also would be available offline at some other point if any of you would like to meet to have more opportunity to discuss these issues.
I'm going to go over here.
The first question I want to ask is, in terms of implementation, how does the
it is our plan to implement the policy, but there is sufficient time for us to talk through exemptions or other matters that are presented that are on your minds as concerns. And this is not the type of policy that would need to be approved by the Board of Trustees. It's an administrative policy that we're intending to adopt. But it is not etched in final stone, so we do have the flexibility to have our thinking improved and to make revisions where we think that would be beneficial.
One of them is based on an increase in housing students of about 250 and revenue, the low side of revenue at about 500K per 100 students to 100. That's $1.25 to $2 million in additional revenue. What impact does that have on financial life and their pockets?
So the revenue that this would yield is several $1 million, right, because it's res life and dining. So the students who are not living in a apartment-style housing assignment are required to take one of the dining programs and one of the dining options. So it's room and board. So the revenue approaches $4 million or so if we fill 300 more beds that we're not filling today. I believe that money needs to be invested in the physical part as a consideration, because I think our buildings on average are 49 to 59 years old. They're somewhere in that range, and they're tired, right? And so we need to refresh them and improve them where we can. We've been doing that over the last 10 years, but I think we need to invest more in that.
So I guess the second, the flip side of that concern is block allocations below 7. Is the housing and dining, our res life and dining services revenue positive, revenue neutral?
The revenue positive. Both dine and we can talk about what this means, because I think the comment will get some slides, but both the dining program and res life are well administered, and the staffing in those departments are very mindful of student cost and experience and the quality of service that we should provide. So they're well run, and we end the year with profit. But so that's all the more reason why then, if there's more profit, why it should be put back into those programs.
And then the third point concern I have is what are the exemptions in cases of financial hardship would exempt students from the requirement? Is there any way we can modify that so that students who are unable to meet financial burden are instead helped with scholarships or financial aid so that they can also have that experience of being on campus?
Well, financially package would be looking at the total cost of education, so not solely tuition, and that would be standard practice.
Yes, but I will share with you, it's standard practice in many of our offices, financial aid team students, my office, others, when students, and this happens frequently, when students present or when we learn from a faculty member or an advocate that a student is experiencing financial hardship, we offer to meet with students or more to see how we can get them in front of the right people so that they can be considered for greater support. And it's not uncommon for students who are being repackaged by financial aid if they experience some kind of hardship or some kind of sudden event, like a parent loses. We also have some scholarship aid that we routinely grant to students. So our practice would be, if this presents new information about student hardship or financial challenges, we would be thinking about, well, then how can we help this student separate from or in addition to this process?
Any other questions?
Once you start zero cost pass and everything, and you get those funds from the housing, like, is there any plan for like how like the family do you have any like is there any planning for like with that kind of
Yes, so what I envision could happen, and this is not certain yet, but this is certainly a conversation that we will have in student affairs and with our colleagues throughout the university, is we have an active committee that meets bi-weekly, monthly at least, but is it monthly? So there's a committee that's comprised of staff from student affairs. It involves res life staff, dining staff, student union staff, other facility owners in some ways. Ellie sits on that committee, and David Clokey, who's one of our colleagues in student affairs, is one of the conveners of the group. And we work with staff from our facilities and operations areas, and we spend time deliberating on where our funds will go furthest to improve our facilities. And every year we have a budget to invest in improving the housing stock or the student union or other facilities. And so we spend the year talking through the condition of our buildings and where we think we have the greatest challenges and greatest needs. And then we have the challenge of figuring out how to allocate those dollars best, because the needs far outstrip the resources. So my hope would be we would then be able to grow the resources by doing this. And again, what we're going to do with the implementation of this is advocate that more of these funds would then be part of that deliberation in that process. And the good thing is, it's a very collaborative committee, and we often come to consensus across various offices saying, this is the highest and the best use. Our biggest challenge is that we have so many buildings that need attention. It just doesn't stretch that far. So maybe that's one area in particular where student voice can really help us. We have a good sense of the buildings, right? But you all have an important stake in giving us your impressions too.
Are there any other questions? All right, awesome. Make sure that when you ask your questions, you project. You want to make sure the rest of the body should get it as well. Go ahead.
How will transfer students be affected by this?
This is not intended for transfer students.
Other questions?
Yeah, what other options were considered to increase the profitability of room and board other than just requiring more students to live on campus?
This has been an ongoing, so I'll just share with you. So UConn enjoys an impressive status in that about 67% of our undergraduates choose to live on campus. We don't require anybody currently to live on campus. And when we consider that against like institutions, only William and Mary has a higher percentage of undergraduates living on campus. Now, if you think about other, and unlike institutions like Amherst College, where they have everybody living on campus, that's not a good comparison. But when you look at schools like Stony Brook and Penn State and Michigan State and UMass Amherst, Northeastern, we enjoy by far the highest percentage of undergraduates living on campus. And that's been the case up until 2 years ago. And because there's so much new housing that's been built in stores in Mansfield, and there's so many single-family houses that have been flipped from owner-occupied to rentals, students have shopped and have decided to live on campus in greater numbers. So the phenomenon is fairly new. We've never considered an on-campus residency requirement prior to 2 years ago because we couldn't have accommodated the students. We couldn't have accommodated 250 more students because you all know we were bursting at the gills. We were already oversubscribed. So we're not doing this primarily for revenue generation. It is one of the outcomes of this policy. But what we've said is, now that we have several hundred vacant beds and we anticipate that will continue if not grow, what is the best way for us to think about those beds? What should we do about those beds? We've never said, why don't we increase room and board to a higher rate so that we get more revenue? You know, that happens on its own, and it has happened while we've been involved here. But what we said is, now we have 300 vacant beds every fall, and we have about 600 vacant beds in the spring because we lose more students mid-year because they graduate or they go to student teaching or they are excused by the university or they just go elsewhere. So we have hundreds of beds now that we've never had before. So what we've deliberated on is, what is the best way for us to consider using those beds? And this was what we arrived at. Because it is common practice. I'll also share with you, and I've borne this out, and Ellie was smiling when I say this, but there's 40 years of research about how college affects students at Rosemont. But there's 40 to 50, yeah, exactly. So there's 40 to 50 years of true research on how college affects students. And some of that focuses on what is the benefit or gain of living on campus versus commuting. And the research suggests that on-campus students in greater numbers graduate, earn stronger grades, and report having more connection with their alma mater and more satisfaction with their college experience than students who don't live on campus. And these studies have been done across universities around the country for years. And we know this from our own students here. So we think the best use of these vacancies is to implement a policy that places more students living on campus so they derive more of these gains.
Thank you.
Are there any further questions?
First of all, thank you for coming and speaking to us. I was wondering if the university ever considered as an alternative to this, filling those vacant beds that become vacant in the middle of the year, offering them to off-campus students at prices, at a discount from the beginning of the year to fill them. Was that considered? Or?
It wasn't, and for several reasons, but it's not that we shouldn't give thought to some of these ideas. So one of the challenges that I would see is it's difficult to break a lease. You know, for those of you who live on campus, you know you don't sign a totally discretionary lease. It's usually a 12-month or 10-month lease, and most landlords are not interested in granting students freebies to walk away from their lease in a year. So that doesn't typically present as a market that wants to live on campus. So, but that doesn't mean that we won't give that some additional thought. The other issue is, and I get this question or suggestion a lot from students and others at the university, about us discounting prices or wheeling and dealing. And I don't mean to be flip, kind of, being flexible or elastic in pricing. The reservation I have about that is, I don't know how I would justify charging the speaker the going rate and then mid-year offering a really attractive, more generous price point to a student who comes mid-year, because I'm offering the same amenity, and I think in some ways students deserve that amenity at the best price possible at any point in time. And I don't know that students would necessarily understand or favor us, negotiating and having a sliding fee scale based on calendar or individual student circumstance. So I think those are interesting questions, and we won't necessarily rule them out, but it's not where we started with this prospect.
Any other questions?
Is there any concerns going into this that you guys just kind of really want to be having to figure out that because it seems a very attractive model.
Well, it depends on who you speak to and speak with. So I think that we will yield about 300 or so candidates who should be considered. And I think there'll be several dozen that have compelling reason for being granted exemption. I mean, they will live elsewhere for litigation. And I think we're going to have enough vacancies to accommodate that pool of that group of students. Now, that's me, and I'm kind of confident about this in the moment. If you were the executive director of Residency, you would be a little bit more tense than me, because ultimately, Pam's Congar, a colleague who runs Residency, is worried. What do we do if we have more takers, or whatever the class comes to be? What if there's just more students in these categories? And I think what we would just do is we would reach out to the students and say, we want to hear from you if this is your preference. And what we do is work with the problem that presents. I think, as I see it, that's probably the greatest unknown is what will the freshman class look like next year? Is it variable and different from year to year? And will there be, instead of maybe 75 students who would be affected under this group, what if there's 175, there's 175 change of campus students, and there's more returning students who actually choose to come back next year on campus. So that I think in some ways is the biggest operation unknown. The good thing is many of us have worked at campuses and multiple campuses where this is standard practice and has been for generations. And so, we've seen this work, and it's a pretty standard practice. It's not a huge operational challenge.
I think that we also recognize that the adoption criteria will be fluid, and we'll work with it as it comes along. I think there may be some surprises along the way, but I think we're ready to be nimble and respond.
Anyone else have any questions?
This is pretty quick. I guess in the same vein, our enrollment will be changing over the next 5 issues. With next year, there's the question of the overall enrollment in the university. Those that we have to make as that plan shifted over time, the state will 19.1
So I am not privy to any plans to dramatically change enrollment levels. Right? And the goals for the last 2 years have been to maintain current enrollment. So that's the unfortunate point tonight that Nathan is not here, because given his role, he is centrally involved in any conversations about I'm not aware of any change of plans, but I think that's probably a question you want to still surface with me and others of the university.
Any further questions? All right, last one, and then we'll move on.
So like, are the vacancies scattered, like, or are they like consolidated? So like when you build these, like, will there also be like, for audit positions and stuff like that? To also accommodate?
So the way vacancies occur commonly in residence halls is they are scattered across all buildings. They're in counts of a handful in those buildings. It's one student does not actually appear or leaves the university early, so there's a double room that's occupied by one person. That's the most common, and there's not one location that has a huge count of these positions. And then from fall to spring, it happens, it amplifies. There's just more scattered all across the campus. If it happened in one building, then we know which building we really need to either repurpose or polish or renovate, but it doesn't occur that way. And so there's a lot of suggestions that we hear from people suggesting that here's how you can fill the building. It's not a building, it's half a room scattered across the campus at different times. So again, thank you for granting us this time on the agenda. We are eager to hear any feedback or suggestions you have. Ellie and I are available offline and at your convenience if any of you would like to get together and talk about this or any other issue at any other time. But again, thanks for doing this.
Just before you go, is it acceptable if I save this and send it out to the presentation?
Yes. Yes. We hear the calls for transparency, and it's our mode of operation to begin with. So yes, and we're welcome to we're available to shed even more light on this and answer any questions. So have a good evening. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Next on the agenda, we will, the Puerto Rican Latin American Cultural Center will be presenting to us.
I'm going to try to talk as loud as I can instead of using this because I'm a very short person and this doesn't work for me. So my name is Ashley Amaro. I work at the Puerto Rican Latin American Cultural Center as a co-coordinator for the Latinx Student Leadership Council, which is a council run by students. It is 24 student organizations underneath and affiliated with PERLAC, and also 5 program chairs that host events every year.
Hi everyone, I'm Stephanie. I'm one of the administrative assistants that works at PERLAC, and also this year I am homecoming chair for PERLAC.
So first of all, just to tell you a little bit about PERLAC, our mission statement. Our mission statement, just to instead of reading a little paragraph to you all, is to improve the status of Latinx students here on campus, and then to promote awareness, understanding, and appreciation of Latinx students and Latin American culture. So we do this by working independently, collaboratively with the university departments and community organizations. We have educational and cultural programs. We also have services and leadership opportunities for our students. And then overall, we emphasize to the community as a whole, and then with faculty, staff, and student staff.
So some of PERLAC's visions are student retention, student engagement, and student development. And so we do this by working alongside faculty and alumni, as well as we partner up with other on-campus departments. And lastly, we try to empower Latinx student organizations to try to make this happen.
So here's just a little bit about our history. So the Puerto Rican Latin American Cultural Center arose from a struggle of civil rights and economic justice that found many U.S. campuses and cities during turmoil in the 1960s. At the University of Connecticut, issues arose such as racism, inequality, and access to employment and opportunities in education. We were addressed by numerous student groups and concerned individuals.
So at UConn specifically, this was led by 4 Latinx students. Their names was Maria Castro, Ana Isabel Lopez, Bruni Gutierrez, and Isabel Rios. And they all 4 of them formed a student organization called the Puerto Rican Student Movement.
Today, Perlac is an ideal place to learn, study, hang out, get to know friends, and build yourself as a student leader. Always feel free to come through.
Yeah, and we always want to emphasize that it really doesn't matter about your identity. There is no membership type. We do welcome absolutely everyone, and we do emphasize that, no matter where you come from or what you identify as, that you're more than welcome to come to the center at all times.
And especially during the years when we became a center. In the beginning, we were La Casa Boriqueña, which is we were a little hut right offside the campus where everyone really had to walk to. And then in 1977, we got our first full-time director and staff, and we returned to the Puerto Rican Center. And then in 1985, we became the Puerto Rican American Cultural Center. In 2006, we moved right upstairs to the 4th floor in the little corner right next to ASEN. So a little bit about our stats.
Okay, so 11% of the student population here at Stores actually self-identified as Latinx.
Out of those students, a graduation rate of 63% in 4 years, and then we've grown to 78% in 6 years.
And the retention rate for Latinx students has actually grown immensely over the past 5 years, and it currently is 91%.
Right now, the popular Latinx schools and colleges are CLAS, Engineering, College of Agriculture, Business, Fine Arts, Nursing, Education, Radcliffe Hicks, Pharmacy, and General Studies.
And some of the most popular here Latinx students that we have are Puerto Ricans, Peruvians, Dominicans, Mexicans, Colombians. So, you might have noticed that we mentioned the word Latinx, and I know that might be a new term for some people. So, in the Spanish language, we tend to we form our nouns based on gender. So we have the female and the masculine. However, the language is changing as times are changing and this discussion is changing, or if you're trying to have more of a forefront towards non-binary, talks and things like that, we're actually changing the language as well. So for example, in this case, we're changing the X for the L and the A, which is what makes it masculine and feminine. So we call it, like most people, and as a whole, instead of saying Latinos, which is masculine, we say Latinx. And so this is just a way that, we want to make sure that we're welcoming absolutely everyone. So it's our way to make sure that people feel welcome no matter what they have, or where they come from, or anything like their identity, their gender, nothing like that. So it's just our step, and we try to emphasize this throughout our students and really teach others who don't really know about the term yet, because it is fairly new.
So we have plenty of annual programs that happen at Perlac. Hispanic Heritage Month, we take that seriously. When I mean we take it seriously, I, as a coordinator for LXSLC, which is our acronym for Latinx Student Leadership Council, almost each week this past Hispanic Heritage Month, we had 3 events. And those 3 events either were a social event, an educational event, or a cultural event. And most of them were historically cultural, just to give you an idea of exactly what's going on, why do we have the rights that we have, and where did all of that come from. This past year, we actually had, on our Instagram page, we had a Latinx activist every single day. So from Illuminating the Path is something that we've been taking pride in. It's an event that happens every fall semester. This semester, we had Maria Hinojosa. I don't know if any of you know her. She talks a lot on NPR. She's a very famous journalist. She also has her own podcast called Latino USA, which talks a lot about Latino issues that are going on and rising across the country, and not just in the country, internationally, but she does focus specifically on the United States. This, you can see that's Bonnie, our director, with her being all beautiful. So it's kind of just set up as a reality show, and we sent Bonnie questions, and we find out exactly who's coming. It's kind of like a big reveal. We send Vanya questions of exactly what we would like to learn about Maria and her history, what's going on. So she talked a lot about her development as becoming a journalist, especially during a time when female journalism was not the norm, and then exactly how those struggles arose from being a woman and being Latina, and how she overcome them.
And it might be a little biased because I'm homecoming chair, but one of our most popular events is homecoming. I'm sure all of you know, but that is a big deal at UConn. So it consists of like banner, alma mater, the float, card chalking, lip sync, and royal competitions, and lastly we have a football game. But this competition is held every year, and we take it extremely serious at Perla. But it definitely is one of our favorite ones that we have during the year.
And like a joke. Stephanie can tell you from experience that homecoming 100% is all student run. She had to take on so many battles as a homecoming chair, overseeing all of the committees, but we do take that very seriously and making sure that our students do as much as they can, and that all of I think I've heard of it we have. So Noche Latina, that's a new thing coming this year. In the past, it's been Latin Fest. I don't know if any of you have heard of it. It's usually been a very typically large thing that happens in Jorgensen. We usually had a very large artist come. The last one we had was in Puerta Santa Rosa. He was a very famous salsa singer. He won Grammys. He did a lot of great things. He came out with beautiful songs. And not only does it just that, all of our cultural organizations come and they perform traditional dances. It's just a complete celebration of Latin American culture. We have food, we have music, it's just a great time. And this year it's going to be replicated as Noche Latina. And instead of having and spending so much time focusing on a very large artist, we're going to be focusing completely on our students. And it's going to be kind of in a sense, I don't know if any of you have seen Asian Night, but we're going a little bit more for that, but definitely more food and a lot more dancing and a great time. And passing the torch is a thing we have every year. It's when our old e-board relinquishes their duties to their new e-boards for all of the student cultural organizations, and also for the Metas program, which you're going to learn a little bit about. That's when they also relinquish their powers as being a co-coordinator, and it's just kind of a shadowing event so you can know exactly what you're getting into. We do trainings, it's kind of like a retreat, and then we have s'mores at the end of everything. Recognition banquet, which is the last photo here, it's recognizing all of our PERLAC students that have been through PERLAC the entire 4 years, have impacted this Latinx community, and their students that are leaving behind them, and give them a stone just to celebrate them. It's food, it's music, your families and friends are welcome. We do have awards, and we also recognize all the Latinx student council organizations that have become Organization of the Year, and so on.
So we do have other events. So one of them that is very popular is Spanish Hour. For most of us, it's practicing Spanish, and for a lot of us, it's actually learning it, because not everyone knows to speak Spanish in the center. So if you don't know or you're willing to learn, you should definitely come in. But you kind of just practice Spanish for an hour. You speak it, conversations and games. We also have one called Café con Leche, which is basically coffee with milk. And so it's just the casual, I mean, that's a staple to our culture. Just you sit down and some cafe. But you have casual conversation over some topic that maybe is affecting the Latinx community, and it really does bring people in for that. As well as we have cara a cara, which is face to face, and this one is usually when we bring a guest speaker, and this is like their chance to speak about a specific topic, as well as interact with our students and faculty that we have in the center, and then we have Afro Latinx.
So Afro Latinx is an intersection between our Afro culture and our Latinx culture. So I don't know if you know, in the past, just like there was a slave trade here in the United States, there was a slave trade internationally, especially in all of our Latin American countries and territories right now. So in the past, this wasn't really recognized, especially because Latin American communities are very anti-Blackness in ourselves, which is completely incorrect. We should be embracing all of our identities, everything that we come from, everything that we are, and move past that and grow from that. So right now, this has grown. It was just a week. Now, it was a week, then a month, and then it became a semester, and now it's a whole year-long event. So now we have We have poetry slams, we have paint nights, we have just everything embracing Afro-Latinidad and imagining yourself and learning more about your history and learning more about the intersectionalities between being Afro and then being Latinx.
So here we have our META's mentoring program. So META stands for Mentoring, Educating, Training for Academic Success. And some of the goals that we have is to enhance Latino retention, to create a strong sense of community, provide leadership opportunities, and to aid first-year and transfer students with the transition of college. So basically, it's a program where we combine a first-year student with a student who's been here more than 1 year, just to kind of help them get used to the campus or any help with academics or social help. Being a first-year freshman, I think for all of us can be a huge transition. So especially because we want to raise our retention rates, we want to try to find someone that can help them transition easier and keep them here till graduation day.
The main thing that's happening with our META students, they are now becoming student leaders, and I think that's from definitely seeing their mentors grow and then wanting to improve what university we live in. And most of all, they're graduating, and they're graduating by a lot. Like, their rates are amazing, and it's growing every single year. And we just started this program in 2006, and it's more than tripled in size. We now have no space for them all in our center. They don't fit. We can't have them all in one spot. So I think it's just overshowing like exactly how much Life is influencing the next generations that are coming and how much it's actually helping and maintaining that retention rates. And everyone can be a mentor. You do not have to identify as Latinx to be a mentor. We have a lot of diverse mentors this year, and they're helping their students out the most, especially because they're helping them adjust to now. Maybe they didn't come from a place where they came from a very urban community and they don't understand the culture shock of coming here and meeting new people with maybe not being so close, to the city or a store or to the mall because we're in the middle of nowhere.
That's like our latest class that we just had, which is cute, which is the biggest one we've had so far. No. And then, so another mentoring program that we have, and this one's a little bit smaller, but this is cute. And so we collab this program with ASAC, which is the Asian American Cultural Center. But this is actually a program that we do with middle school students from Shirley and Wyndham. And so this is kind of like, there's monthly gatherings between the mentor and the mentee. And so they kind of do like cultural events as well as field trips, science programs, journal writing, just to kind of like, motivate them to come to college and start talking about that and like that discussion, because a lot of students don't have it at home.
So LXSLC, so Latin Student Leadership Council, we have 24 student-run organizations below us that are affiliated with PERLA. We also have 5 committee chairs. So those committee chairs are Afro-Latinx, as I've discussed before, and then Homecoming, Stephanie right here. Husky-Thon, so we do have our own team for Husky-Thon. It's kind of just facilitating and making sure that we have those conversations with students that are, we are having conversations with those students that want to become part of those things, but we also have 3 communities under us that are not large enough to be having these teams. So it's just reaching out and making sure that we have a team. We have Mixed Heritage, which is also a collaboration with the Asian American Cultural Center, which is just embracing the different mixed cultures that we have within us, and also explaining to other people that mixed is beautiful in the sense that we all are carrying our own cultural baggage and just showing each other what it is, what we have, and embracing it. And then we have Welcome Back, which is a program that occurs each spring. So it's kind of like right when we come back to campus, it's like welcome back. All the cultural organizations kind of showcase everything that they have, and it's kind of just as a recruitment strategy to just bring either first-year students that couldn't really go the first semester, when you don't really want to go out or you're focusing on your studies, to just come back, see what's new, show them something that they can be a part of, and it's dinner, it's a great time, it's just a new way for you to make some new friends. Noche Latina, as I discussed before, that's also run by a chair, which is a student. So all of the chairs are students. All the students run all of these programs.
And I think what's important to know is that these are all existing positions, but we're still open and we actually motivate our students to create their own if they feel like something's missing in the center or they want to see something more. So now our student organizations, there's a lot of this, but so the first one is the Association of Latino Professionals for America. Then we have Violet, which is honestly one of our favorite ones. It says bringing awareness into Latino ethnicities, but they do this through dancing. So they have, I think it's bi-weekly meetings, and so they bring a choreographer and they teach our, typical dances like cumbia, like bachata, merengue, like all this stuff, and like people love to come from all sorts of places, just to learn. And you really can get to know people and things like that, and you learn how to dance, which is important. And then we also have GOLS, which is a graduate organization of Latinx students. We have OLA, which is the Hearts Over Latin America, and La Comunidad Latina Lambda Fraternity Incorporated.
So the other ones that we have are Lambda Theta Alpha Latin Sorority Incorporated, Lambda Theta Phi Latin Fraternity Incorporated, Latino America Unida, Lambda Alpha Upsilon Fraternity Incorporated, Señoritas Latinas Unidas, Sigma Lambda Upsilon Sorority Incorporated, and SHEP, which is a Society for Hispanic Professional Engineers, and Students Without Borders.
And then our cultural-based organizations, which also are very popular. We do see our students, most of them, as they identify to their culture, they tend to come to those. However, we have a lot of students that are just intrigued to know more about that culture, and that brings them in as well. So we have the Brazilian Student Association, the Colombian Student Association, the Dominican Student Association, and the Ecuadorian Student Association.
We also have the Half Asians People Association, which is another collaboration with the Asian American Cultural Center, Mexican Student Association, Peruvian Student Association, and the Puerto Rican Student Association. Just touching on all of these, as you've noticed in the previous slide, we do have a lot of networking opportunities for our students. This gives them the opportunity to not only help them here in college, but the grad school for goals. They're very open and they have like graduate student panels about how to apply to college, where do you go, what happens after, and how do you pay for all of this. And this is very open, this is open for everybody, but it also gives you insight into exactly, if you look at the statistics, there's not that many Latinos going into not higher education, but higher education as in like graduate school or working towards more than that. And just having these students here and someone to talk to, these other students now have these opportunities and they have kind of like an inspiration to look at them and kind of ask them questions. Having someone at your disposal like that really impacts you. And then as like Stephanie said, for the other cultural organizations, anyone is welcome. You can definitely go in there and there's usually food. And I mean, it's good food. We're not having dining hall food. These people are making rice and beans. They're frying things up for you. There's some pork there that's amazing. So these are just ways to learn about not only our culture through our food, but our music, our dance, and how to just learn about everything that's going on.
And I think what's important too to know is that all these are student run. So within each organization, they do have roles: the president, vice president, treasurer, secretary. So these students are really stepping up to these important roles and teaching them things that they didn't even know about themselves. And I think that that's what we try to empower within Perlac. It's just the fact that, beyond these walls, after college and everything, you're going to take on these roles. So we want them to learn what are their strengths and what are their weaknesses.
If you follow us, we'll follow you right back. I promise.
Yeah.
Like 3 minutes.
And we'll
like my co-coordinator, he's on it. Like on it. If you DM him, he'll respond too. We'll say see you in 3 minutes. So I promise, if you want to look this up, if you want to see anything that's going on at all in the cultural center, it's all here. And it's not even just our cultural center. We put stuff from the Cultural Center, Rainbow Center, ASAC, AACC. It's all.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yes. So then you have
Are there any questions?
Hi. So, Inya, thank you for presenting. I really think it's great what you're doing, especially the Cafe No Leche. Excuse me for butchering that.
That was very good.
Good.
That was really good.
I tried. So, one of the things that I saw is your graduation rate for 4 years amongst the people identified as Latin and Mexican community is 63%, but it's compared to 73% average for UConn. Now, what can the university do, or what can USG do? Do you have any recommendations? Are you satisfied with that? Has it been running up over the past couple of years?
It's actually risen a lot. It's been in the past, I think in the past 5 years, part to how much attention we're having as in metas and then our cultural organizations, and those have grown a lot, like exponentially. But I think it's more so just having this understanding that we are here, and it's like it doesn't feel like that everywhere we go, in a sense that in classes we might be that one only person there, and that professor asks you, like this has happened to me, or in an English class, they'll just be like, hey Ash, what's your part on this? It's like she's a Mexican American writer, of course I'm Spanish, so it's like it happens, and I think that's one thing that like there needs to be some cultural sensitivity training and awareness going on in our faculty and our staff, and I think that's important across all identities, not just Latinx. Also,
I think like having conversations like this is such a good start, you know what I mean? The fact that like a lot of our students do feel like our voices need to be heard, you know what I mean? And like things like we need to talk about our retention rate and what is going on, like, you know, what is the issue, what can we do? You know what I mean? So this is just a foot in the door, but I think that this is already such a big step, you know what I mean? I think this helps, and I think that, you know, like we see it, and we see it within our students, like they know that we're here, and they know that, you know, we're willing to speak up, but them as well. So you willing to hear us and you willing to ask those questions, I think is already doing such a big step.
and like I said, like these things are all open for everyone, and I feel like just coming and seeing what our center is about also provides you that boundary to understand what exactly we're going through, because most of these, like some of the retention issues is not just here, you know, it's stuff at home. It's like I might come from a low SES and I need to work to pay for my college, and I can't because I'm supposed to be in college, but it's also like there's other things that we really need to work on as a state, I feel like, in general. But I feel like just having this conversation and you all maybe coming to any events that we're having is definitely a great step.
Any further questions?
May I have a follow-up?
Okay.
So you mentioned that your events are open, which is great. Are you satisfied with the amount of non-Latinx identifying students that come to your events?
Personally, I'm not.
Okay.
I'm not. As a coordinator, we host these events with the interest of course, our Latinx individuals in mind, but it's also for other non-Latinx individuals to learn exactly what's going on. Most of the time, for example, like there's going to be like rallies and stuff tomorrow. Like most of that is generally because we want our voices to be heard. And if no one's coming to these giant events that we're hosting to kind of show what we're really all about, it's not working. It's working for us to like make us feel like we have a home, but it's not working upon that and like through UConn, because it feels like sometimes UConn is separate for us, and they should do together.
Any
Any other questions?
So, if you like, once you like, say you reach all your goals of like getting like what does that vision look like? What does that ideal look like across the what are you shooting for?
Like all of you at Baile or no, I think that like overall, like I mean I can speak personally. I think it's just like the biggest thing would be like feeling that we feel the division sometimes, you know what I mean? And I know within the students in the center, they feel it too. And so I think the biggest thing would just kind of be like, so for us, it is a little strange to see people who aren't Latinx. We're like, oh, like, I wonder how they heard about us or how they know, like, you know what I mean? So it's almost like that, I feel like, not being a thing, like that conversation, that question not being asked, I think would be okay. Like, that's a custom. We're so used to seeing each other everywhere, you know what I mean? Like, seeing these faces who are different than ours in the center, I think to me would be ideal, because like right now it's almost like we have to pull teeth to get some people in here, just to even know where our center is. Like we're located on the 4th floor all the way in the corner, and I know it's a hard spot, like, you know what I mean, people just don't go up there. And so like, you know, even people just being aware of where the center is located in our events, like I think to me that would be just like an ideal situation.
Going on with that, like that definitely is a very large thing, but I feel like providing that, the idea of cross campus, because right now, like, it's not just with us, it's with other cultural centers. might look at a poster of UConn and just be like, oh, like, we've been tokenized, there's just that one brown kid conveniently right there. So it's just like having like the ability to have this feedback and this conversations with people that are higher up that kind of control everything we do. You know, we have to go through avenues, we have to go through our bosses to do whatever we have to do, but it's also in the sense that that poster should be accurate of UConn. You know, it's kind of overlooked most of the time that UConn is a predominantly white institution. And don't get me wrong, we are growing. It's good. Like the Latin community right now is 14.7% of this university, but it should be 25. You know, like at most, you know, everything should be evening out, and everyone should have an equal representation across everywhere. Especially because Latinos are the fastest growing population in the country.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we will have a presentation from the Student Foundation, UConn Student Foundation. You come right up. Oh, just let me know when.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you to the board up here for allowing me to speak this evening. And thank you to the Senate for those of you that are still here. I know we're an hour into the meeting. You guys have a long meeting tonight. Just as a quick background, since I can sympathize with you, I was president of the Grad Student Senate for 2 years before I ended up in this position, so I've sat through lots of Senate meetings. So I'll try to go fast. So again, my name is Tony Pataludas, and so I'm the elected student director of the UConn Foundation. If you don't know what that is, I'm going to run through that. The election is coming up, which is part of the reason why I'm here. So I'm here to advertise that as well. And the model for the UConn Foundation is strengthening UConn one relationship at a time. Cool. Okay, so what is the UConn Foundation? It's a not-for-profit, tax-exempt institution. There's a memorandum of understanding between this corporation, the UConn Foundation, and UConn that the foundation will manage UConn's investments and funds that are collected externally, which means they invest and they manage UConn's portfolio. So you've probably heard the endowment, or that UConn has this magical $400 million treasure trove. And that's what I'm here to talk to you about, and kind of maybe dispel some myths, or perhaps you already know because this is a fairly educated body about the university. It is governed by state statute, and there's a board of directors, which I sit on as a non-voting member, and one of you could be sitting on next year. Okay, it manages all the alumni relations, and then the board of directors specifically meets once every 4 months, and in between, if you're an active member, there's other committee work and whatnot that you could be doing there. So, thanks. And just so if you never knew what that big brick building was on the corner across from the Rock, over near North Garage, that's the UConn Foundation. There's always activity going on there. Next. All right, so again, strengthening one relationship, strengthening UConn one relationship at a time, and then students today and Huskies forever. And I put that up there. I'm wearing my Huskies forever shirt, by the way. But I put that up there for a very specific reason, and something that I was told that I didn't think about before someone told me it, is that your degree is not stagnant, right? So all of us are going to leave here at some point. You don't transfer with a degree from UConn, and wherever you go, you bring that with you. And as UConn gets better as an institution, your degree gains more respect, right? So we are already in a great standing, right? We're ranked 18th, and I believe we're at 22 right now. But that can always go up, and people know the name UConn, and that will help you as you move forward in your future. So as the foundation grows to help UConn, the reputation of UConn grows. And, a criteria that's actually in that US News ranking is the number of students, regardless of how small it is, that donate to the university. So how active philanthropy is in the student population. It makes up 5% of that ranking. You can go to the next. Okay, and just a quick note on the importance of it. This is actually really old. This is from 2016 from Scott Jordan when he presented at the Grad Student Senate Meeting. This is the university budget in a pie chart. You'll see up there that state funding makes up about 30%, and that's down to about 26% right now. You'll note that tuition over here is the next biggest chunk at 27%, and none of us in this room want to see that go up. Okay, foundation funding right now is only 1%. Okay, so that's the endowment, which I'll get into. When interest is paid off, that goes to scholarships, which is funneled as tuition for payments, and that can be a lot bigger. That as state support goes down, we need to make up that extra percent somehow or another. And so if the foundation grows and our endowment grows, tuition doesn't have to go up as much to account for that loss. Okay, so how do we match up right now? So endowment amounts, you saw Dean Doherty earlier and Vice President Gilbert present on peer and aspirant institutions and how they matched up for freshman housing. Well, here are some of our peer institutions right now. You'll see UConn's down the left end there, and we are tiny. And there's some historical reasons for why our endowment is so small. It's because during the 90s and the early 2000s, UConn was funded at such a high level from the state that they didn't really care about fundraising. Okay? And all these other schools had their budgets cut. For instance, if you hit next, we'll go to some aspirant institutions. So the University of Pennsylvania, Penn State. So Penn State is funded at less than 1% of their budget by the state. However, it's still a state institution, right? So compare that to our about 30%. Okay, there's a reason their endowment is $3.5 billion. It's because they started getting cuts way early on, right? So they need to start growing money. And we've now entered into that territory. These are our aspirant institutions, so other large public researchers that are ranked higher than us we want to be like. You can see again, we are much, much smaller than those. That is changing how many years ago was it? 6 years ago, I think. The foundation got a new president, and he stepped in and he said, no, we need to fix this because our future is not looking good right now for the size of the endowment that we have. He's actually leaving now. In addition to the search for President Hurt's replacement, there's a search going on for our foundation president replacement. So hopefully we get someone who will raise the endowment as well as he has done, which I'll get into some more numbers very shortly. As we move forward, again, just try to get, really nail this home, right? Here in aspirant institutions, and how much money do we have per student? Right, so over here you can see we're around $20,000 a student. Now, not all that money goes to students, but a lot of that money, as we'll see very shortly, is in scholarships, right? So as institutions have more and a much bigger endowment, they can fund more scholarships for more students of need, or merit-based scholarships. And so the student director, so what am I, who am I here, or why am I here, who am I? So the student director is an elected position, which again will be up for election in the spring. It's a 2-year term, but if you graduate, similar to the board of trustees position, if someone else will run for that. Okay, it's elected again by all students. That's how I got into it as a grad student. It's just a general student population vote. There is not a separate grad and undergraduate seat, unlike the rest of the university. And I've been trying for my entire 2 years there to get that changed. And I've not been successful because I'm not in a voting position. I've done what I could to talk with committee chairs, talk with the president of the foundation, and to try and push that. And I have not been successful. I think that's probably my biggest failure in this position, because that's what I went there to try and do. Anyways, I'm non-voting. It's ex officio. I sit in on the board meeting. I sit on committee meetings. I talk to people and try to get stuff going. The goal of the position is awareness, engagement, and community building. So awareness, engagement are why I'm here, right? So a lot of people, when I ran for the position, you have to get signatures just like every other general election. And a lot of people had no idea what the foundation was. And I think that's pretty common. I mean, I didn't either when I was a student, when I was an undergraduate student, and I only did because I started digging into it when I was grad student senate president. So part of my goal has been to talk to people and get awareness of the foundation out. Okay, to engage both the student body but also the alumni body. So part of my role there is to, or if any of you want to run for this position, it's a lot of fun. You get to go to social events with alumni and you just kind of hang out and talk to people. Yeah, it's pretty fun. And community building, which falls into the engagement. So, you get this one. So foundation monies, there's a link down here at the bottom to the foundation's annual report. I just wanted to again kind of run through what the endowment is and what those monies look like. So the foundation money you can think of kind of in 3 pots. There's endowed funds, there are unendowed funds, and then there's operating money. So of that $447 million that falls into the endowment, that's money that someone donates. It has to be a single donation greater than $50,000, and it sits there, and the principal is never touched. So that money's invested, and the investment committee, picks the investments. And I think they typically get about a 14% return on the endowed funds. 4% of that they gain goes back to the university for whatever fund it's earmarked for. So pretty much all money that's donated to the foundation or to the university is specifically earmarked for a very specific cause, whether it's a department, a faculty title, a building like the Wirtz Center, merit-based scholarships, need-based scholarships. It's very specific, so that money cannot be used for anything except that legally. So here's the growth over time. As I said, the endowment's 447. This is over President Newton's tenure. And you see we have an 18% growth over a 3-year period, and he's been around for 9. This growth has been extraordinary and very unexpected. So hopefully we continue that trajectory. Next, the blue colors came up terribly here. So how do we do this year? So what do donations look like? This is kind of a breakdown of general donations that we've gotten. So there's planned gifts, so these are like estate gifts, so maybe you're really wealthy one day, as I'm sure everyone in this room will be, and you say, I loved UConn when I was there, I'd like to, when I pass, I'd like to leave $5 million for whatever, to USG, to endow the USG Presidency, or your Senate seat perhaps. So when someone passes, that money comes through, but this is the pledge that someone has signed and said, when I pass, that's where I'll go. The next line here are outright gifts. So if you gave during Giving Day last year or yesterday, which was like the National Day of Giving, so that would go into cash here. And then the last one are multi-year commitments. So like the Wirtz Center, for instance, that $20-some-odd million donation, I'm fairly certain he didn't write a $20 million check and say, here you go. He probably said, over the next 5 years, I'll give you $5-6 million a year. Okay. Again, a further breakdown here. So last year, we raised $82.4 million. This is how it breaks out. So $46 million are in academic programs. There was $3.8 million to capital improvement projects, that's buildings and whatnot. There were $7.5 million to research, okay, and $2.8 million to faculty. So faculty get endowed positions. That starts at $1 million. Someone names a faculty chair at $1 million or greater. And what that does is it sets at least $40,000 a year to fund that faculty member. It can fund innovative projects. It can fund students in the lab. We don't have as many of those as many of our peer and aspirant institutions do. So that target needs to be increased to really raise our standing. Over there you can see $11.4 million to the health center. And then there's $10.4 million in athletic scholarships, which I will get to on the next slide here. One of the things that I hear often, you can flip the slide. One of the things that I hear often is that people only donate to athletics. That's kind of a myth that's floating around out there. So although this data only goes through fiscal year 17, fiscal year 18 is not on here, the trend continues. You'll see on these bars here, athletics is in the top proportion, okay, and the rest of the university is in the bottom proportion. So that includes academic work. This year is disbursements, so this is money given from the foundation to the university to fund things. You'll see one anomaly here, fiscal year 14, that $28 million is for the Worth basketball training facility, which is why there's that huge spike. But typically, athletics is funded less than the rest of the university, which we are here for academics, so perhaps that's how it should be. And so other activities that have gone on. Last year was the first UConn Gives Day back in April. We painted the rock across from North Garage. There's events around campus on Fairfield Way. Okay. And this was extremely successful. Many other campuses, I believe Penn State's raised like millions in a single day on this. For our very first one, raised $260,000 in a single day, which is excellent. We've raised a lot of first-time donors here. There's 1,300 alumni that had given money that day. Many of those were matching prizes as well. If you went online and they reached, say you reached $5,000 for CLAS scholarships, an alumni would throw in a $5,000 check to match that. So student engagement that's currently going on. There's National Philanthropy Day. We have Ignite, which many of you might be familiar with. There's a competition every year for student organizations to go out and get philanthropy. So student organizations can set up a foundation account and get donations outside to bring in to fund their activities in addition to the budget you get from USG. So that's through the Ignite. And when you raise, they do a awards for that. So alumni will donate a matching $5,000 to the team that gets the most single number of donors, or the highest amount of money raised during that. Student Alumni Association is one of the organizations funded here. They set up Oozball, and there's alumni networking nights that they set up. And so they work fairly closely with the Alumni House and the foundation. And the last thing I'd like to mention here, which is something a little different than the other, is the USG Mentor Network. If you're not familiar with it, it's a collaboration between the alumni portion, the alumni arm of the foundation, and the career development services. And it goes out to source alumni that have gone out and had successful careers to directly mentor you. And I've used it myself, actually. I've had a couple meetings, and it's pretty phenomenal. We have a lot of really great alumni out there. And so, again, I've mentioned numerous times that there are elections coming up to replace me, and I'm happy to take questions on that. There's a couple more slides here, but I just wanted to make that announcement to this body because everyone here is already a student leader on campus, and everyone already knows how the university functions. So if you'd like to get a perspective from a nonprofit to sit on another board, similar to the Board of Trustees, I highly recommend you run for this position. Go to the next slide. So what's the impact of this position? Something that is a little terrifying coming into it, but it's gotten better as I've adapted to it, is that there's really no outline for this position. It's completely open to what you want to make it. So you could, if you wanted to, you could try and start your own initiative with the collaboration of UConn's administrators and of the alumni that have a lot of money to give, to try and start an initiative on campus or something that someone would like to name for $10,000 or whatnot. It's open for building for expanding and building a student philanthropy network. As I mentioned, the number of students that give, even if it's $1, plays into the university ranks, so you can have an impact on how the university grows. There's a lot that could be done for the student body that I don't feel that I've succeeded in this role in doing, and I think there's somebody else that can do it much better. But in addition to that, and just to what you can do for the community, there are advantages to yourself as an individual being on there. So all the board members that we have are executives in whatever industry they happen to be on. Here's a very short list. You can go to the foundation website to see the board members. So professional basketball player Ray Allen sits on the board. The CFO from Nordstrom is on our board. The president of Aero Pharmaceuticals, which is one of the it's a pharmacy chain in Connecticut that he's also one of 3 people that has a medical marijuana license in Connecticut, so he's one of the few dealers. The CEO of Madison Green, CEO of Eversource New Hampshire, the executive vice president and general counsel for Webster Bank, senior vice president for Coach. So there's a lot of people that are well established in their industries that enjoy interacting. At least in my experience, have enjoyed interacting with me. And you get to interact with these people in a formal setting at the board meetings, but also in social events fairly regularly. Where, after one of the board meetings, we went down to Greenwich and went down on the guy's boat for an afternoon and just hung out on the boat. It's pretty awesome, just personally for you. So consider that advantage in running for this position. And I think that ends my presentation. My email address is here. I'm happy to talk further. I know, again, I've been up here a little while, and you guys have been already sitting for a while. So happy to take questions, or if you don't, you can email them.
All right, so we'll take a few questions. Go ahead.
All right. So, in your time as director of the UConn Foundation, what are some of your points of pride, initiatives that you started, looking back, things that you want to look back on, successes?
That's a great question, and I don't have a good answer for that. So something that I ran into. So again, it's a non-voting position, and the board only meets once every 4 months, as I mentioned. I have had board members tell me that I have been much more interactive than previous board members. I had one board member tell me that they didn't hear from whoever was in the student seat for 5 years, right? That's concerning to me, and that's why I was there and I attended as many events as possible to try, again, building community, right? So I think I've improved at least the visibility of the student seat. My original goal coming in was to get two student seats, a graduate student and undergraduate student seat, permanently placed there. That did not succeed, and I have continually gone back for it, and even when the president was leaving, I pushed on that. The state statute says that you need a student on the board with a max of 50 board members, so it's open for more than one student. There's been reasons, and it's been in discussion, there's been reasons why they haven't added another student, and it mainly comes down to the fact that they hadn't viewed the seat as being active enough and adding enough value. I was working on a scholarship conference on campus for research, and it fell through for various planning issues and committee issues, as I'm sure everyone here has served on committees where things don't go as planned. So unfortunately that fell through. Yeah, so as far as impact on the student body, I think there is so much more that should have been done and that could be done by someone who has maybe more energy than me or has better direction coming into it. I mean, part of my goal in exiting this position, I didn't have any mentorship coming into it, so the student who was in it before me, I met with her once, and then that was kind of it. I didn't have much direction. I am writing up kind of a transition plan, so as any student organization should have, or any leadership role should have, there should be an explicit transition plan of here's some stuff coming in to build on and make this experience better. That is not in place. I'm working on that. So hopefully whoever takes over, from my seat will do that sure.
So, any student, so an undergraduate, graduate, when the term is
It is a 2-year term. However, as far as I know, previous people have, like similar with the Board of Trustees, people have come on for a year and then graduated. So, yeah.
I have questions. One, was there any push to make the seat of the seats that were
Yeah.
oh, we're more impactful, and then,
Yeah, so I had not pushed to get voting status because I figured if I couldn't get another non-voting seat, it was unlikely I would get voting status. I did, before I came into the seat, I did talk with Senator Flexer and Representative Dodd to go over the possibility of changing this. I didn't get much ground there because I believe it's in state statute that you're a non-voting student seat is non-voting, so that would have to be changed above where the board sits. But that doesn't mean it can't be done. This body is a good legislative body to lobby, so.
I don't know. How much is how long, how many hours a week do you spend on stuff in the foundation?
Not a lot. So as I said, the board meeting's once every 4 months. So the board meeting is a lot of time so the board meeting is kind of 3 days of activities. So typically board members fly in Wednesday night and there's like a dinner or something. Then Thursday you'll have committee meetings, and you typically serve on 1 or 2 committees for the board. And then there's an evening event, so something like a scholarship dinner or the endowed faculty dinner. And then Friday's the board meeting. The board meeting is 2 to 3 hours. Then there's a working group meeting to kind of negotiate strategies for identifying new revenue sources. And then typically, and so the social events are optional. I highly recommend whoever takes over the seat attend them because they're fun. And then so the afternoon after the board meeting is typically some kind of outing. And for homecoming, there's you're invited to the president's suite for the homecoming game, so that's kind of cool.
Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Can we just start the presentation?
Yeah, you can send us, that's fine.
Yeah, okay, me too. Next, we will have a presentation on transfer student acclimation and retention.
Hi. So, I'm going to keep it real brief because I've been here for an hour and a half. I've been standing in the back with you, so I know. I used to be a senator. So I'm going to keep it real brief. I want to present you with an opportunity to advocate. Honestly, I'm here. I read in the digest on Monday that there's 23 new senators. And I was reading about the motivation and your interest on creating lasting change and having an impact. So what I want to present to you is there's a demographic of students that exists that experience a 50 to 60% graduation rate in a 6-year period. That demographic of students is campus change students. And they currently have no staff, no paid staff that work particularly on their behalf, no paid student workers, no center, no landing zone, no touch points. When they get here, they're on their own. And in 2 years, they have to create enough experiences that you all get to experience in 4 years. On top of that, they have to cram a lot of their major courses into those last 2 years. And they have to acclimate to a new campus without any help. A lot like PERLAC, and the way that PERLAC started, a group of students came together and said, there's a problem here, there's an issue here. System's failing us, let's advocate for ourselves. I'm one of those students that started this group. We're a student group called the Branchford Club, so branch campus transfers, the Branchfors. We started this club a year ago. We went through all the red tape. We're up and running, and we got legs. But at this point in time, we need you. You're the advocates for students. And this is your time to shine. So I don't want to take your time. I know you have a lot of stuff to talk about. But if you're interested in supporting this demographic of students, we have an e-board in place. And we got legs. And we've done a lot of the groundwork for you. But we need your help at this point. That's it. That's all.
Does anyone have any questions?
Can you please cite the statistic with the, I want to say you said 50 to 60%
Correct.
graduation rate? That's 4 years or 6 years?
That's a 6-year time period.
Do you know what the statistic would be for 4 years?
I don't.
I'm sorry.
So the comparison rate, so those numbers may be a little dated. I went to a University Senate meeting where those statistics were presented by Sally Reese, who was the vice provost at the time. And so depending on the campus, it was anywhere from 50 to 60% in a 6-year time period. The comparison numbers for STORE's cohorts is 80 to 85%, which there's a gap. There's a major gap. I'm sorry, did I answer your question?
Thank you.
Any other questions?
This is more of a putting myself out there. I'm the chairwoman of academic affairs, and I'd really love to work with you on this. So if you, when you're done, like talk to you in the back and get your contact.
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I know you got a lot to do. You can contact me. They have my information. So I appreciate the time. I really do.
All right. Now we'll move into individual public comment. This public comment will be limited to 2 minutes per person. Each of you will come up. First, we will start with the people listed here, and then we will move to taking people who raise their hand. The first on the list is Louis Toscano. You have 2 minutes.
Am I allowed to take this down?
Yes, you are.
Can I address the senator?
Yes, that would be preferred action.
Thank you, Speaker, for allowing me the time to speak. Oh, it's their button.
Yeah.
Thank you. Is this better?
Also, if I may, just before you speak, when you have 10 seconds left, I'll have to gavel 3 times just to notify you. So.
Okay. Thank you, Speaker, for the time here to present a few thoughts that I had on the funding legislation that will be proposed to the senators today to vote on for the next semester. I just wanted to come as a concerned student, express some of my concerns for the Senate to hear so that you may take them into account when voting and possibly amending this piece of legislation. My first concern is the time frame with which this legislation has been delivered to all of you senators and all of the leaders on campus. I think that a 3-day time span in order to spread this information from all student to all leaders on the campus is ridiculous. I think that it should have been handed out much earlier on in the process so that there could be more of a review process and more of an amendment process so that it reflects the will of the community and not those who initially wrote it. While I do think that it has a number of positive benefits, I think that there are a few key areas that it could have a bit of improvement. And I think that the writers of this legislation did a wonderful job amending it since the town hall yesterday. And I just think that it would have been better had there been more time to make these amendments. More time to seem more democratic, and more time to seem transparent to the students of UConn. So the main problem that still remains in my estimation is with clause 4.8.1. I believe that this clause, the final sentence of this clause specifically, should be struck, seeing as it limits the growth of student-run organizations funded by the undergraduate student government significantly. It prevents our renown and our ability to be transferred around the world internationally, specifically to anywhere outside of the United States. And I think that this should not be so. It wasn't so before this new change, and it should change. Thank you very much for hearing me out, and I hope to see some meaningful debate on this topic. Thank you.
Just a quick question. Now, senators that are involved in other student organizations, are they allowed to speak from their personal experience as a senator with their own organizations, or would that be appropriate?
We would ask that you refrain from involving specific outside organizations, but if there are general issues of policy you take, you can of course express those. Next, Risa Lewis. You just go up there, you take it and adjust the mic. You have 2 minutes, I'll tap on it.
Hello, my name is Risa Lewis, and I'm representing UConn Student Blues. I'm a social media coordinator, and I'm reading a statement from the president and vice president as I came here tonight. I just found out that I have 2 minutes, so I apologize for the speed of my voice. Okay. We'd like to propose 3 changes to the current policy. First, we propose amending the definition of open event to replace advertise in the best way to reach those students with advertise or planned to advertise upon funding request approval in the best way to reach those students. Under the current definition, student organizations will be required to advertise for events prior to the funding request being approved. Proposed amendment will prevent student groups from having to advertise events they are unsure will be able to occur, risking cancellation and deterioration of confidence in RSOs. Second, we propose adding the following addendum to 3.19.1, prohibited expenditures. Funding is permitted for events that are open to the public if and only if A, fee-paying undergraduates are granted priority, B, such inclusion is integral to the RSO mission statement and beneficial to fee-paying undergraduates, and C, such inclusion would not incur marginal costs or impact the fixed costs of events. Under current language, RSOs who receive immaterial support from alumni, graduate students, or other mentors would not be able to permit them to attend their funded events. This amendment would protect the intent of USG funding without harming RSOs with active alumni networks and graduate student members, whose support is integral to the mission of these RSOs. Finally, we propose changing the wording of 3.19.1 to expenses that financially or materially benefit primarily non-undergraduate student participants. The current use of benefits includes indirect benefits that extend beyond the campus. The proposed specification will add clarity to the policy to reflect the reality that USG funds the enrichment of student lives, which has exponential impacts beyond a student's academic career at UConn. By leaving the word as used, a student could receive training or instruction funded by UConn, by USG, and then apply that at an internship, and then this benefit would indirectly be benefiting non-undergraduate students.
Your time is elapsed.
Okay, if you would agree with any of my proposals, please come talk to me over there. Thank you.
The policy, we have a presentation. We will be putting this presentation in the drive so all senators may be able to take a look at that. All right. Are there any other members of the public that would care to speak in public comment? Please raise your hand now. It will be. go 2 minutes.
Good evening, Senators. I want to start out by saying this is an overall excellent piece of legislation, which I truly believe will benefit the student body as a whole. However, I also came here today to talk about the provision of this legislation, specifically Chapter 4, subsection 8.1. Restricting travel funding to just the continental U.S. is a very limiting policy, and uses a hammer on a problem that doesn't really look like a nail. Now, I will say that I understand the opposing point. It seems the crux of the argument is liability and vendor disputes. However, the assumption that students are going to be any more at risk at an academic conference in Canada than they are when traveling all the way to Colorado just doesn't make sense to me. I'm all for student safety and accountability on this matter, but we can do that without blanket bans on funding for travel destinations outside the U.S. There are many student organizations which compete in places outside the U.S. for which UConn is already renowned. I know because I'm a member of UConn's Travel Model UN team, which was nationally ranked only months ago. We traveled to Canada just this last year, where we participated in the most competitive conference that exists in the Model UN circuit. As such, this clause would directly inhibit RSO's mission of becoming the top-ranked Model UN program in the nation. We've already seen what harsh budget cuts have done to our university, causing us to slip back through the rankings this past year. Let's not make the same mistakes again. I ask that this body amend the current legislation to the effect that it supports our RSOs and doesn't limit their missions. I yield and thank this body for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public that would care to speak in public comment? All right. Seeing none, we will now move into the approval of the minutes. The first item, the only item necessary is a motion to approve the minutes from 11/14/2018. Motion goes to Fernando, second goes to McCormick. Are there any points of discussion on this motion? Seeing none, we'll move into a vote. All those in favor of approving the minutes, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Any abstentions? In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, motion carries. All right. Now, I'm going to motion by unanimous consent to move into new business. I think that we have a lot of pertinent items we need to get to, and we should move to that, and we'll be able to move back into reports after. Are there any objections to these? Seeing none, it is so ruled. All right, we're into new business. The first item of new business is a motion regarding the nominations of Evan Metzner to University Growth and Development Committee, Sai Sanjara to University Course and Curricula Committee, Avishan Answer to the University Enrollment, and Janeza Schuler to University Diversity. I will yield to the president now, so she may.
Hello, everyone. So we've been here for about an hour and 15 minutes. Thank you for hanging in there. I really appreciate it. So I just want to talk a little bit about my nominees tonight. As I mentioned to you all before, I decided to look outside of leaders of UConn outside of USG to fill these positions, just because I want to increase our outreach and really put these, get different feedback from different students for these different committees. And so I have a few nominees here. I'm just going to read a little bit about each one of them and their involvement on campus. So first up, we have Evan Metzner, and he is my nominee for the Growth and Development Committee. He's a double major in economics and history, and he's a fourth-year student. He has been involved in cross-cultural connections on campus, the International Business Society, and the PD Green program, where he served as a student volunteer to travel to a local prison to tutor inmates pursue their GEDs. Next up, we have Sai Sanjana Vietlet, who is my nominee for courses and curricula. She's an honors physiology and neurobiology major, and she's also a fourth-year student. Since freshman year, she served as a student teaching assistant for the FYE program, so she mentored teaching assistants for those classes, and she also is a member of the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences Leadership Board. Next up, we have Janeza Schuler, who will be serving, or hopefully be serving, on the Diversity Committee. She is a chemistry major and she is a sophomore. She has served as the Academic Excellence Chair for the National Society of Black Engineers, and she currently serves on the Executive Board for the UConn chapter of the National Council of Negro Women. Next up, we have Avishan Montazur, who will hopefully be serving on the Enrollment Committee. She's a management and engineering for manufacturing major, and she's a freshman. She was a student body president of her high school. She was a facilitator for her freshman seminar course. She was a part of the Key Club, which was a group of students that helped in the admissions portion of her high school, and she was also a peer connection mentor. So these nominees are very qualified, in my opinion, and I was very excited to I'm really excited to hopefully work with them and really getting this feedback to administrators, and I'm excited to see what you all think.
Thank you. Will the nominees who are here please stand? Do each of you accept the nomination? Yes.
Yes.
Can you accept the
Yes, I'll accept the
Is that a motion?
Was there a motion for this item?
There was not. Apologies. We're going to need a motion. So, motion goes to Senator Sacramento, second goes to Reynolds. Alright. So all the nominees have been accepted. Are there any points or discussions on this motion? Alright. Seeing none, we'll move into a vote. This requires a 2/3 vote as they are confirmations. All those in favor of confirming the nominees, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Any abstentions? In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, the motion carries. Congratulations. Before I move into the second item on the agenda, I just wanted to talk about the new limits on debate that I have decided to set to make sure that we keep everything we're talking about concise and germane. So from now on, everyone will be limited to 2 times to speak per motion, and I withhold the right to give preference to people who haven't spoken yet over those who have, to make sure we hold different opinions. On top of that, when it comes to amendments, the 2 people guaranteed to speak will be the proposer of the amendment and the author of the piece of legislation who objects to it. From there, we'll move to remaining speakers on an as-needed basis to make sure that amendments do not weigh the body down as a whole for more procedural items. Besides that, the 2 minutes per speaker remain the same, with the exception of the author of a main motion, or the presenter of a main motion, will get 5 minutes to present their either piece of legislation or their motion. Everyone has the opportunity to yield to questions if they have any time remaining. Otherwise, I always hold at my discretion to set limits on debate to extend or lower them as I feel is necessary for the benefit of the body. Are there any questions? All right. Seeing none, we are then asked to consider a motion regarding the nomination of UConn to the ex officio seat for the International Students Advisory Board. Is there a motion? Motion goes to Moore, second goes to Glassman. All right. I'm going to yield once again to the president so that she may speak on this.
Hello, back everyone. Long time to see. So my nominee for UConn Cal, she will be serving on the as an ex officio as for the ISAB seat. I can't speak today. So as you may or may not know, we do have 2 seats for international students. One is for Lynn Ho, she was approved a few weeks ago, and finally have our second seat filled, hopefully filled by UConn. So
Is the nominee here? Will you accept that? Is there any other points or discussions on this motion? Seeing none, we'll move into a vote. All those in favor of the confirmation, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Any abstentions? In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, motion carries. All right. We will now move. The next item to consider is a bill regarding the undergraduate student government standard operating procedures of the funding student staff. Do we have a motion? Motion goes to Senator Zanskowicz, second goes to Senator Anandahl. All right. First person to speak will be Comptroller Thakur. As she proposed the legislation, she will have 5 minutes. I will tap my thing.
introduce myself really quickly. I'm so happy to see all the new senators in the room. I'm happy that you guys ran and that you guys are representing your constituents. My name is Priyanka. I'm the current USG Comptroller, and I'm going to be proposing our new funding policies. So I'm very proud of these policies. We spent about, I would say about 7 to 9 months on them. We've had meetings up since around February, and that was with our past comptroller. That was before my term even started. We've been working on these policies. So definitely a long way, and a lot of revisions, and a lot of drafts, but it's finally here for you guys. So this is it. I hope that you all had a chance to look at it before you came here today. It is 17 pages long, but the last page and a half, I believe, are all definitions. And these definitions relate right back into the policies, and we did this so student groups and student leaders know what we're talking about and can refer to these definitions when they're unclear about any sort of term or definition. I also have to thank all the students that came to our town hall today and that are coming in today for public comment. I appreciate your voice and I appreciate your suggestions, so thank you so much. So our objection and our mission when creating these policies was to make best use of student fee money that goes right back to UConn students and right back to the UConn community. And that was our main objective creating these policies. We also wanted to make it as efficient and as clear for not only our funding staff, but also for RSOs when they are requesting funding. In my personal belief, this is 3 or 4 times better than the policies we had before, and I definitely think it's going to make a big stride to how students submit requests, as well as what they're submitting for and how much funding they are being given. There were currently about 10 writers on our current funding policies, so although I am the one presenting them to you today, I'm not the sole writer. We've had our funding student supervisor, Shreya and Aaron, who are actually back there. We've had our Chief Justice, Justice Tumu, as well as our President, our Speaker of the Senate, as well as our full-time staff, John, Darian, Nikki, Lindsay, as well as Kim Miller from the business office. So I know a lot of people, but that just means a lot of effort has been put into these and a lot of consideration for the students. Let me repeat that, a lot of consideration for the students. Definitely trying to make the entire funding process a lot better and a lot fluid as a whole. So just a little summary of the main components. It was a little give and take, I would say, with the policies, but all caps that were from 65% to 100% are now 90% to 100%. That includes events that are happening within the semesters. Alternative breaks are from at 50%, like we were before as well. That's the only cap that has not gone higher. So I truly appreciate all the student opinion that we've had on this. Obviously, we cannot make every single group happy. However, I do think that this is the max benefit that we can give to students that funds them as much as we can, but also opposed to our policies. Not only our USG policies, but Tier 3 policies, university policies, and state policies. So I believe this is the best compromise that we can get to at the moment. So I will take questions, but like I said before, there were many different writers on these policies. So if I cannot answer them, then I will yield to the proper people who may answer your specific suggestions, comments, concerns, etc. These policies are urgent. They do need to be passed today for the funding staff to move on with requests for spring 2019. Our goal was to get this done for next semester, and I do understand that it is a little time crunch, and I personally apologize for that. But to promote transparency, we had a town hall yesterday, and within 12 hours, we made all those changes, and we took those suggestions and revised some of the policies as well. So if you scroll through the current policies, everything in red is added, and everything in black is what we crossed out. And again, that was after our town hall yesterday. So we definitely used suggestions from students and came to a compromise of what can we truly do and what can we do in our capacity. So again, we do have to pass these hopefully by tonight with any proposed amendments. So at this point, I will yield back to the chair.
Thank you. Is that a motion or voting up?
Question for you. issue. So like what are your thoughts on that? Are you gonna negative?
Right, so I discussed that a lot with Chief Justice Tulu, and I think that he can talk more about it in just a minute. However, I do realize that groups may be, their growth may be compromised, however, we do not stop them from going to Canada. And our cap on travel and hotel stay is up from 65% to 90% and above, which means that even though we are compromising their Canada trip, if so, we are still providing more funding for other stay and travel if necessary. So again, it's a give and take, and there's definitely a benefit that goes into that as well, that we were trying to come to a conclusion about. But can I yield to the Chief Justice?
For the point of information. Yield to the Chief Justice to answer us.
So, can you clarify the question?
Oh, so it just seems like 4.8.1 seems to be like a fairly consistent issue with the students who make their opinions. And I'm just curious, what are the discussions around that, and if there's any thoughts on it.
And just to clarify, 4.8.1 is the section that refers to international travel.
Yes.
Okay. I've got a couple of things to say in response to that. One, we are hearing from a very, very vocal minority. There's only one group that's actually come forward with the issue with this policy. But that said, it's very valid. There are a couple of reasons we can't do it. One, we have tax exempt status. It's really messy. And a lot of the times when we deal with international vendors, we run into issues where they will charge us tax. We can't do that. There are also forms, legal documents that need to be filled out in order to do business with the state that are often not complete. In the past, we used to fund things that come from international vendors, not travel, but ordering things from other countries. And our 6-week process was horribly compromised. You would order something at the beginning of fall semester, you wouldn't get it until the end of the year. It's not usable, right? And that's because our policies and procedures, there's a lot of difficulty for these international organizations in following them. Concern number one. Concern number two, there's a lot of added liability that comes with international travel, especially international travel that's affiliated with the university. So I travel for academic conferences, and there's an insurance policy that you have to go through and fill out. There's travel registrations that you need to complete. There's a lot of stuff that has to go on in the back end. And for our office to take on the additional administrative burden of verifying that all those things were completed is going to add lead time. I think that maybe in the future, we can figure out a process to get international travel to work. To Canada, honestly, more likely than maybe we start with Canada, then we add Mexico, then we add Alaska. We can start expanding, but I think that currently our operational focus should be on let's execute domestic requests right. Let's take this small subset of requests. Let's take, frankly, the vast majority of requests, whether they're capital requests, contractual service requests, or travel requests, and let's make sure we execute. Let's try and provide the best level of customer service, the most responsiveness, and go from there. So let's start at ground zero and move from there. Can I answer your question? Anything else? I'll yield back to the.
Yield back to the chair.
Yeah. All right. Now we will move into the speakers list. Chairperson Reynolds will be first up. This is a reminder, you have 2 minutes, I will tap on this when you have 10 seconds.
All right, thank you all for coming out here tonight. I know there's many representatives from student groups and people who were involved heavily in the funding process that are here tonight. I want to ask, and hopefully we can go into further depth about travel to Canada and international travel. The main question I would have is, what is comparative to the trip that travel model you took last year to Canada? What were the considerations made then, and were liabilities and different factors that we're looking at now taken into account then? And specifically, are we changing any policy from the policy we have now when it comes to international travel?
Was the question you
One comment here. So I don't want to get caught in a conflict of interest, but I'm president of the travel model team, and I proctored that trip to Canada. So is it within my authority to speak on that clause, or no?
All right, so you may speak on the clause itself. We would prefer that you did not specifically invoke personal experience with, say, potential issues with this and raise those conflicts, those problems. That is acceptable. Next on the speakers list is Deputy Speaker Douglas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First of all, I would like to thank the comptroller and everyone else who's put many, many hours into the funding policies that are proposed before us today, and acknowledge the hard work that went into all of those. Directly to the point raised in 4.8.4. At the town hall last night, there was a lot of confusion about directly who this applied to, the definition of the word conference, although the word conference is the second word in that clause. That word is now defined in the 7th chapter. It is defined specifically so that when groups like Travel Model UN go to their conferences, which are competitions, they are funded as competitions the same way any other dance competition would work. So a dance team would take all 15 of their members, or however many of their members are necessary to perform in the dance. The Travel Model UN team would be treated the same way within the continental US. To 4.8.1, which is the part about the continental US, I think that the restrictions to Canada, previously I was not in favor of this, but after having spoken to the comptroller and the Chief Justice, I think that it makes sense. I spoke earlier with some of the members of our funding staff about what they have to try to go through to make something like a trip to Canada work beyond the additional legal liabilities of does your insurance apply above the border, or do you have to talk through global affairs and that kind of stuff. That was just more than we can reasonably expect them to do per normal requests. But I'm not entirely sure why Alaska and Hawaii are excluded to that point. With that, I'll yield to the speaker.
Is that a motion?
Whoever can answer the question.
Yes. Go ahead.
Who funded the trip to Canada last?
I'll yield to the Chief Justice to answer that.
We did, right? But I want to point out that, as Deputy Speaker Douglas stated, there were a lot of things that had to be done above and beyond to make that work. I want to emphasize another thing. The caps for everything have gone way up. The goal of these policies, from a kind of a tier 2 budgetary standpoint, is we want you to get all $10,000. We want you to hit our cap. We want you to get all of the money that you can from USG. And once you do so, spend your own money to go on that extra trip, right? Maybe you can't go to Canada this year, but you can go to 2 or 3 other competitions, and maybe that makes up for this year. Maybe we can work out our processes to, have it. Maybe we can make Canada work in the future. But for right now, I think this is more than decent cover.
Would anyone else like to be added to the speakers list? Okay. No. So, Senator Glassell next. Is that a motion? Or, is that okay?
So we've already heard arguments from both sides about 4.8.1 about the only being inside the continental U.S. Now we've heard from Comptroller Thacker that in order for these regulations to be brought into effect, it needs to be voted on tonight so that they can start, so that the funding office can start taking action straight away. So I believe that our best course of action right now is to approve this section, the travel within the continental United States, and wait until such a time as the Comptroller's office can come up with a solution for travels beyond the continental United States, such as first working out a way to go to the North American continent and then work beyond. And that's something that they can work on after this is already in place, so they can already get started on the work that they need to. And that we should focus more so right now on other issues that we might have with the rest of this document. I yield.
Thank you. Next on speakers list is Senator Cota.
Hi everyone, my name is Sasmita. I'm one of the school engineering senators. I have a quick question regarding the policies for, especially like the taxes that have to be paid for all the international travel expenses. Is that something that the students or anyone from the student organizations can help with forms with that particular part of funding? Because most of these like funds that are given by USG are like a set amount of money that help the organization. So if the organization does choose to like want to take that advantage to travel elsewhere, is that something that the student organization can help with, whether it's like out-of-pocket expenses or other?
Is that a question?
Yes.
Technically, that would be a point of information, but
Okay.
can you raise a point of just a second?
Anyway, okay, this kind of gets into the mechanics of it. So groups don't pay for anything. USG pays for everything. So let's say that I fund something at 90%. The group will pay USG 10%, and USG will disperse the entire fund amount to whoever. And because USG is part of a state organization, we don't pay taxes. And that gets lost in translation, especially across borders. Other people have their own laws, other countries have their own laws, and they're really iffy about avoiding taxes, reasonably. What is it? Nothing is certain in life but death and taxes. Luckily, our organization gets exempt from that, but people don't, right? Vendors don't. And so when they hear, oh, don't pay taxes on this transaction, they kind of freak out. And if you're within the continental United States, we have policies, procedures, documents. There's ways to make it very clear. But it's really difficult to do that across borders. And that's where that comes in. And what that leads to is often not a complete inability to work with whoever it is, but an incredible increase in lag time. Something will go from 6 weeks to 30 academic. And that's not reasonable or feasible. It's not fair to the student group. If they expect to receive something within 6 weeks, and we know that it's going to take way longer, it doesn't make sense. And there are workarounds that have been developed to try and remedy that as well. But groups have developed those on their own, and they work really well.
There's a second one. You have 2 minutes.
Hi everybody, thank you for your time. So just to be, in an effort to be transparent, I am the current president of the Travel Model UN team. However, I'd like to speak on this floor as a senator. So, to begin, I attended the town hall last night, and one of my concerns as a senator was that there were completely different reasons given by the comptroller, by the funding staff supervisor, and by Ms. Miller, who I do not know her title, regarding the sudden barring of travel outside of the continental United States. Comptroller Jakar indicated that exceptions could be made on a case-by-case basis, and I personally left off with her at the end of the town hall that she said that she would be interested in putting in an amendment, a change, to allow exceptions on a case-by-case basis, provided the event outside the continental United States is integral to the club's mission. Now that did not happen in these new policies. Secondly, Ms. Miller said that it was an issue brought up by another student that international vendors are not funded by USG, so why would international travel be funded? Now perhaps the Chief Justice can correct me on this, but as far as I'm aware, the travel model UN team traveled to a Canadian hotel, which was paid for by USG, and they used a Canadian airline called WestJet, which was also paid for by USG. Now those are both international vendors, so I don't know what the sudden change is that USG no longer deals with international vendors, but they have in the past. And thirdly, the student funding staff supervisor, Shreya, said that it was an issue with drinking in Canada. Now, the drinking age in Canada is 18 years old, and here in the United States it is 21. So Shreya's point was we should not be funding trips in which students would potentially illegally drink in Canada. Now, just a reminder, the drinking age in Canada is 18, and when you're outside of the United States, you are subject to that country's international law. So it would not be illegal for someone that is 18 years old to drink. So my concern, just to reiterate, is that there were different concerns brought apart.
Your time is close. All right, next on the list is Senator Whistler.
I'm going to yield to someone who does not have speaking rights.
You may, yes.
I mean, okay, can we act?
But you have to be on the spot.
Good evening, Senators. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In light of full transparency, I'm also on the Model United Nations team. However, I would still like to kind of shift the debate, or at least my perspective on it, away from the logistical side of funding international travel, and instead more discuss the contribution that with international travel gives to both UConn as well as UConn students, which I was opposed to UConn. I think the value of international travel is being overlooked, and UConn's image on the world stage is defined by the students' involvement abroad. I think in order for UConn to truly advance itself internationally, we must not discourage international travel. However, of course, hear the concerns posed by the comptroller, and I commend her and the staff for working on a great piece of legislation. And I would encourage future amendment in this certain regard. I'd just like, again, to reaffirm my statements regarding the value of international travel, which I don't believe is being disputed, but I think it's being relatively overlooked. So I'd encourage this body to consider the value of UConn on the world stage. Thank you very much.
We have a point of information.
I think the recent speakers who have talked about defending the value of international travel, if they had any suggestions as to what amendment or way to resolve this issue, do you have any you can bring up right now? Or?
Any vote pertaining to something that you have an interest in, if you are a member of an organization, the amendment has, if you pass an amendment that says, oh, my organization gets $10,000 or $20,000 in funding, you gotta abstain from that, right?
I would.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, should it be abstaining from the amendment?
Yes, but you still have speaking.
Does he still have the? I'm going to ask. Does he still have the ability to make motions?
Why not?
Okay. I just clarify. Thank you.
On point of information, if I understand correctly, Senator Fabio is being told he cannot cast votes on this because he's a member of an organization which affects. To my understanding, all of these policies would affect any member of any organization. So there is specific reason why really him in particular.
So I'm following Justin's lead on this. This is a very strange policy, right? Initial allocation is an internal funding.
So it's a policy that we talked to as well. It's a policy for all Tier 3 organizations. Any votes that are going to directly affect any member, they
Understood. So if you're a member of Model Run Club, which is instructions.
Still allowed.
All right, yeah, sorry, I'll speak up. So Model Run Club is what he's in. They travel internationally. You're voting on something that is involving international travel, therefore he cannot vote on it.
Sure, I agree with
Actually,
that.
hold on.
Yeah, I'd like to go so far as,
Can you give me a minute before I render?
yeah, actually, I'm going to motion by unanimous consent for a 2-minute recess so we can discuss this. Are there any objections? We'll talk about it when we get back. I'm moving by unanimous consent for the.
So now they're taking away my voting
Hey everyone, I just want to clarify, this is a recess, not an adjournment, so don't leave yet. Also, yeah, we're way over 2 minutes, so everyone please take a seat.
Can I use that?
Everyone start sitting down. I'll stay here. About to get started again. All right, everyone, please take your seats. We're going to get started here in a second. That wasn't coming to you. Yeah, we're safe.
I would love to.
Thank you.
What do you want?
The amendment hasn't been seconded yet.
I know.
Okay.
Yeah, so the amendment wasn't made, but it's a policy thing. Doesn't matter what amendment was made, right? Okay, so this has happened in the past, right? That's why having Dustin is such a great asset. In the past, funding policy was amended to increase the number of conference attendees, right? And there was a group that had historically benefited from that and directly planned to benefit from it in the future. They voted on the item. It went to the university. There are people that read our policies. Actually, I'm going to propose a set of amendments that came about because someone from the trustee student office said some of the things that were in there needed to be tweaked a little to make sure we didn't violate any laws, right? And it is a violation of policy for you to vote on an amendment or an item that directly benefits you or your group, right? So in the case of Travel Model UN, there's clearly a history of travel to Canada and an intent to travel to Canada in the future. That's your direct interest. So if you're part of another group and they plan to do the same thing or you have done the same thing in the past, please keep that in mind, because that is a concern that you should keep in mind. Does that kind of make sense? Does everyone get why that's... And frankly, we have no say over it because it's university employees, it's people that check for law compliance that have an issue with it, so we don't really get a say. That kind of make sense?
Yes. Okay. But to clarify, the motion itself is still valid.
Yeah, you can motion, you can speak.
Okay. So we will, that motion has been made. It requires a second. Is there a second?
Can you point out what the amendment is?
Exception. So the amendment that is proposed will read, exceptions to this policy may be made on a case-by-case basis at the discretion of the USG President and USG Comptroller if the student organization demonstrates the event is integral to its function. And then another line, exceptions must be applied for during the semester preceding the event. Is there a second to this motion? Second goes to Senator Horsley. All right. We'll now move into discussion. The first, the two people we get to discuss first are Senator Sacamano and Councilor Docker. Will be the author. We'll begin. Senator Sacamano. You only have 2 for amendments.
Hey, hi everybody. So the main reason why I proposed this tonight is because I spoke about it with the comptroller last night and I did not see it in the revised policy. So just to be clear, this amendment would not allow travel outside of the continental United States in general. What it will allow is for a student organization to apply to the comptroller and to the president of USG, application of which they can set, to ask for an exception for travel outside the continental United States. So for organizations such as the Travel Model UN team, which seek to go to the most highly ranked conference in competition in the world, which is held at McGill University in Canada, they would have the opportunity to apply for an exception. For the women's polo team, for example, which last year was invited to participate at a competition in China and was denied USG funding because of a policy similar to this, they would have the opportunity to ask for an exception. The only reason why they were able to travel to China is because the competition in China agreed to give them a full expense-paid trip to participate in the women's polo competition in China. So the purpose of this policy is to protect student organizations and to give them the opportunity to apply for an exception to the comptroller, as the comptroller said last night. That is the only purpose here, and like I said, I am seeking to protect the students who pay money every semester to USG. I'm seeking to protect them and give them the opportunity to apply for an exception if the exception is integral, if they can prove that the event is integral to the club's function. So So I encourage all of you, like I said, this does not in general allow travel outside the continental United States, but it allows student organizations the opportunity to apply for that. So please, I ask for your support on this, and I will be abstaining from the vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Comptroller Thakur, you have 2 minutes.
So I want to thank Senator Sakamoto for working on that and for bringing up this new line item. Just to clarify what I was trying to say last night, it was a considered exception. So considered is non-contingent, means that it will be discussed, and that's why after the discussion, that's why it wasn't there. And so, but I do agree with your this line item. I think that as an elected official and as the president is an elected official as well, we are here to hear students out, and I think this would definitely give an opportunity for students to lay out their case before a confirmed decision has been made. So I do agree with that. However, I'm a little conflicted with the term exception, because how many exceptions can we make exactly? So if one group asks for an exception, does that set precedent for any other group to ask for an exception as well? And how are we making these exceptions? It's going to be by interpretation, and when our term ends, what is the interpretation of the next recessor? So those are my concerns. I yield back to you. I yield to Chief Justice.
Chief Justice, you have 55 seconds.
Okay, and then I'm writing this. So I get up here.
No, he wants to.
Okay. I want to preface this entire thing by pointing out that the only people that have spoken in favor of this amendment are members of the Travel Model Event Team, and the motion and the second were also made by members of the Travel Model Event Team. Second, I also want to point out that there is no club other than the Travel Model Event Club that has requested this exception. 3, why would international travel be integral to a group's function anyway? I have a lot of issues with this. 1, it's coding for exceptions. That's not a great way to write policy, right? If you write policy, it should apply to everyone equally. This just gives preference to people who can articulate well, people who maybe have historical precedent going to these events. It's not particularly fair. 2, we have clearly demonstrated that international travel presents an enhanced administrative and operational burden on the university and USG. There's no need for these exception cases to be handled now. Let's wait. There is nothing wrong with not passing this amendment today and then passing it a semester from now, when we actually know what our kind of operational overhead looks like, right? Let's try and perfect our current process before we move into exceptions and international travel. 4, we're not banning international travel at all. You can still travel internationally. You just have to pay for it. There are things that the students will pay for, and there are things that the students will not pay for. We will cover, if you buy a plane ticket and it's worth $250, USG will cover the entire amount. We used to cover 65% of it. We'll cover 100% of it now. We will cover 100% of lodging up to the per diem rates as established by the government. That basically gets you like a 3 or 4 star hotel for a night. Those are the per diem rates, as per my experience. The upshot is all of these policies, all of the things that have been done in this document enhance the number of dollars that student groups get. Student groups are not prohibited from traveling internationally, but what they do have is the ability to take USG monies and apply it to domestic travel. If Travel Model UN was going to spend on one international conference...
Chief Justice, your time is elapsed.
Thank you.
All right, next on the speaker's list is Comptroller Thakur.
I yield to Budding Supervisor Schrader.
Yeah, you can, but Deputy Speaker Douglas was on the list before. I did not see. He will go, and then. You have 2 minutes.
I like the idea, the idea itself behind the amendment. As I spoke previously, there is that increased burden on the funding student staff that I think I mentioned previously. The Chief Justice belabored, so I won't speak any more to that. However, I do like how in this proposed language, it requires that the RSO say far in advance that, hey, we'd like to do this, and then to work with the power structures within USG to try to make that happen. Now, as the amendment is written and proposed, I don't think it's correct, or I would vote for it in this current state. I think that something like this should exist more in the appeals process, or something along closer to the lines of. Actually, I don't have the exact wording right now, but I would echo the Chief Justice's sentiment that we should pass this in the form it is now, and then come back and revise this clause. But I definitely want to say that I think that if we have this increased overhead that has clearly been demonstrated and can clearly be prohibitive, then perhaps instead of saying to groups, no, we're not even going to attempt this, we should perhaps say, you're going to have to go through a tougher process because the process is tougher on our side. So whether that is a year in advance, a semester in advance, or a 12-week period as opposed to the normal 6-week period, I do think that we should, instead of telling those groups, no, that's it, we should perhaps try to reach out to those groups and say, let's try to work with you, let's try to kind of build a bridge that we can work through this together without aliens.
Thank you. I'm going to use my power since it's on debate to cap it at Comptroller Thacker and then Senator Sacramento. We want to make sure that we can get. Go ahead. 2 minutes.
So quickly before I yield, one of the main reasons that we were also not funding international travel is because USG currently doesn't have enough resources to do so. We don't have enough manpower. We'd rather put our manpower in requests that are domestic, and then more groups get funding through that way. If we do broaden this, an exception is made for international affairs, for Canada, for Hawaii, for Alaska. There's a lot more work that's going to be put into it, and I don't think we have the current capacity and resources to do so. And as of right now, I yield the rest of my time to Funding Staff Supervisor Schramm.
I will allow that. You have about a minute.
I just want to say
Speak into it.
Okay. I just want to say thank you, first of all, to all the senators who spoke on behalf of the policies today. It is super beneficial for us to understand what the thought process is from students who are not directly involved in the process. A couple things to clarify. The main reason we don't use international vendors is because it's not just us that goes through purchasing or payment of vendors. There's a entire department at UConn called accounts payable, and it is not beneficial to them for us to go through international vendors. It makes it harder on them, which in turn makes the funding process a lot longer. So it's not just USG that is involved in this process, which is why we do not work with international vendors. And then also, going back to the liabilities, drinking was one of the reasons that was mentioned, but it's not the only reason why we want to get travel outside of the continental US. There is laws that apply to citizens of America that would not apply outside of our borders, and that would allow, that would cause a lot of liability risk to USG because we would be funding the trip that the students are going on. So that's just something to consider when these policies.
Thank you. All right. Last speaker will be Senator Sacramento, and then we'll move into a vote.
Thank you, Speaker. So, just in case I haven't made it clear, I'm very thankful to the Comptroller and the other authors of the policy because it does these new policies open up a lot of doors and allow much more funding for student organizations. Now with that said, the Chief Justice brought up that the Travel Model UN team was the only organization to apply for travel internationally last semester.
I did not.
Oh, I'm sorry, can you clarify?
I said that the travel.
Hang on. Yeah, you do, but I want to recognize.
I said that members of the Travel Model UN team were the only members speaking up and motioning on behalf of this amendment, which is not the same as the only.
But going off of that point, perhaps the only reason why the Travel Model UN members are here speaking on this amendment is because the policies were proposed on Monday, if I'm correct. And given that I am a senator, I was emailed that these new policies would be happening, and I spoke about them with my members and said that this particular clause would hurt our organization. That's why they are here. Now, I'm sure there are other organizations that would love to be here, but will probably be surprised when they apply for travel to Canada next semester and are told that they can't do so because the policy was changed unexpectedly and prohibits travel to Canada. So, going back, the reason why I worded this amendment the way I did is because it gives full discretion to the comptroller and the president to conduct an application process however they see fit and to approve the exceptions however they see fit. I did not want to write a clause about how it should be done because I feel like I am inexperienced to write something like that. So, again, this protects student organizations and gives them the opportunity to ask for an exception. We do not want to have to rely on a verbal recommendation. You may ask for an exception next semester and we will consider it. We want it in writing, and I think it should be in writing for the entire student body. So again, I really hope that you consider this amendment, hope that you really take into consideration that all it is allowing for an exception to be made by the comptroller and the president. And what it is doing, it is protecting your constituents. Because I am sure that if an organization finds out...
Time has elapsed. Yeah, I apologize for that. Just noticed. Time is just... actually, go ahead.
Can either the comptroller or the president or the funding student staff tell us how many applications for international travel they received in the
Okay, I will recognize this funding student staff.
Just two. The semester
Thank you.
All right, so now we will move to a vote. Before we go in, I'd like to remind you, as we discussed, if you are somebody who will directly benefit from this policy, i.e. a member of Travel Model UN, you must abstain from the vote. Everyone else, as you will. All those in favor of the amendment, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. All those opposed, please signify by saying nay.
Nay.
Any abstentions?
Yes.
In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, the motion fails. All right, now we'll move back into consideration of the bill as a whole. Next on the speaker's list is Chief Justice Toomey.
Okay, if you folks have this document pulled up, there are a couple of annotations in green. Christine Wilson, the Director of Student Activities, was nice enough to come into our office and provide some feedback on what she had read. And as a result, amendments were made. There are amendments to Clause 3.8, which clarify the role of staff in the funding process. Staff do not have discretion. They only apply policy and law. So they apply university policy, Tier 3 policy, and state law and state requirements. In section 3.16, it clarifies to say that USG policies and procedures are content neutral. This is honestly kind of redundant because we are constitutionally mandated to do so. In 3.19.10, it reads fall instead of Thanksgiving. That's just a technicality. And instances of et al. Are replaced because they're not grammatically correct. I would love it if someone were to make a motion to amend all of these things.
So moved. Is there a second to that motion? Second goes to Senator Reynolds. Can you repeat those?
Yeah, they're all in the document up there. Section 3.8 is amended to read, all funding. Yeah, I can do it. So the first amendment is 3.8. The amended clause reads, all funding is subject to discretion and approval by USG's comptroller and president. Staff from the Office of the Trustee Student Organization Financial Support check that requests comply with applicable policy and law. 3.16. USG policies and procedures are content neutral, period. 3.19.10. Thanksgiving is changed to fall. In 4.5.8, the clause now reads, USG does not fund potentially dangerous equipment, including but not limited to firearms and knives, period. 4.7.8 also reads, USG does not fund potentially dangerous supplies, including but not limited to explosives and ammunition, period. And that's all.
Does the author of this accept this suspension? Of the sponsors? Yeah, the acceptance. Good. All right. Seeing as it's accepted as friendly, they don't not require a vote.
I yield.
Accept your yield. Next on the speakers list is. What is your motion?
So, the amendments that were proposed by the UConn Singing Blues, that's in the document, I'd like to propose all of those.
Okay. Can we bring those up?
Yeah.
Is one of the organizations that now presented the documents in the drive was one.
They are all in the folder for today's Senate, if you'll want to take a look at them there. It's called Proposed Changes. Actually, for that reason, I'm not going to show them on the board. I'm going to type them here. If you'd like to see the exact wording as they proposed it, please refer to the folder.
All right. Before we get into any discussion or anything like that, is there a second on this motion? The motion is to. Okay, so yeah, I'm going to recognize Chief Justice for a second.
I've read the points. I agree with them, but I think the wording is a little clunky. I think there's a better wording. Let's just add. Is it 4. There's no.
Yeah, for the first one.
It's in the definition.
I don't know if it's right, but they just trying to. Just make it as. All right. So is there a second to this motion? Second goes to Senator Douglas. Okay.
Motion to provide the question.
Does it make only amendments on this, or does it make the first?
All right, so he's made a motion, and that's been seconded. There's a motion and second to divide the question, which means we'll consider each amendment separate. All right. All in favor of splitting the question, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Any abstentions? In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, motion carries. All right, so now we will move into consideration of the First Amendment, which is propose amending the definition of open event to replace advertised in the best way to reach those students. We propose amending the definition of open event to replace, in quotes, advertised in the best way to reach the students with advertised or plan to advertise upon funding request approval in the best way to reach those students. Who still wants to? Yes. Oh, actually, yes, sit down. The motion. Yeah, actually, hang on a second. Do you accept this as friendly?
I do.
Okay. Yeah, I understand. Just give it a second. Do you accept this? Yeah, hang on.
Can you please make it clear what exactly you're considering friendly or not?
Yeah. I don't think we know. Honestly.
No, can you make clarification?
Okay, where is it now? Okay. So it's being typed up on the board, and we'll be able to see it. Once it's typed up, I'll ask you if it's friendly. By 27, 28, by my count, we do. Ready? All right, is this accepted as friendly?
Yes.
Do the authors accept this as friendly?
Yeah.
All right. Well, then seeing that it's automatically amended. The next, we propose the following addendum to 3.19.1. Funding is permitted for events that are open to the public if and only if A, fee-paying undergraduate students are granted priority. B, such inclusion is integral to the RSO mission statement and beneficial to fee-paying undergraduates. And C, such inclusion would not incur much.
I thought we were doing one by one.
Yeah, but we motion to approve to.
My motion probably one first.
Yeah, I understand, but when we motion to consider them all, we went into discussion on all of them, and you'll get to address them all individually. Is this amendment, as it stands, accepted as right now? The second one, the amendment to 3.19.1. Funding is permitted. It doesn't matter. Okay, so now we'll move into discussion on this. It was not. Well, we're going to allow the deputy speakers a chance to type it out before we move into discussion. All right, so I'm going to proceed to Senator Simon so he may speak in favor of this amendment, and then Councilor Docker will get a chance to speak against it. This is still the second one. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Hi again. So the reason why I brought this amendment forward is because I spoke to the officers of the UConn Swingin' Blues Dance Organization. And the reason why they brought this amendment to our attention is because the events that they host are built upon outside involvement. Now, the event does not target outside involvement. It does not target people that are not students at UConn. However, it does rely upon outside participation. And I think it goes without being said that outside participation is incredibly important on a college campus. Essentially, we live in a bubble. We live in the middle of Storrs, Connecticut. We have our lovely UConn ice cream parlor and Storrs Center, but outside there is nothing. Now, how familiar are students with the outside of UConn? How familiar are students with Storrs, Connecticut, Mansfield, Connecticut? I am a volunteer EMT with the Mansfield Fire Department, for instance. Just now, am I learning what it's like outside of UConn's borders? So the reason why they proposed this amendment is because the previous wording makes it difficult for a club to get funding if outside involvement is allowed. So all this amendment does is say that such inclusion of outside people would not incur marginal costs or impact the fixed cost of events. In other words, it rewrites how a funding request would be denied in a way that allows events that do rely in some form on outside participation from being denied by the funding board. So I encourage you all to participate in this amendment, and I would like to remind you all that when your constituents come forward and write amendments themselves, that should result in lots of thinking, because they are not senators, they are not familiar with doing this, yet they have the time, they take the time and they care enough to bring the concerns forward. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll accept the Councilor Docker. 2 minutes.
So thank you, Senator Sacramento, for saying that so eloquently. After the town hall yesterday, I actually talked to Chief Justice and together we decided to actually add the word primarily so that it would accommodate for UConn Swingin' Blues after they had spoken at our town hall yesterday. And that basically means that their events are allowed to have non-undergraduate members involved as long as the primarily benefit is to UConn undergraduates. So in my opinion, the amendment has already been proposed and does not need the second proposed amendment. I yield back to you.
With that, I'm going to end debate on this amendment, and we're going to move into a vote. All those in favor of this amendment, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay.
Nay.
Any abstentions? In the opinion of the chair, the nays have it, the motion fails. All right. Now we'll move into consideration of the third amendment, which is as follows. We propose changing the wording of 3.91. Oh, that was part of it. Oh, okay. All right. Never mind, there was no third amendment. There's only two. Yeah, I think there is three. Scroll down. Alright, so the third amendment is, we propose changing the word of 3.91, prohibited expenditures to expenses that financially or materially benefit primarily non-undergraduate student participants. Is this taken as friendly?
Can you please repeat that?
We propose changing the wording of 3.19.1, prohibited expenditures, to expenses that financially or materially benefit primarily non-undergraduate student participants.
I cannot keep that one.
Okay, we will move into debate on this. Ms. Sacramento, you have the floor. 2 minutes.
Hello. So the current policy reads, expenses that primarily benefit non-undergraduate students. The proposed change is expenses that financially or materially benefit non-undergraduate students. So what it does is make clear that a request will be denied if it financially or materially, in other words, gift giving, benefits non-undergraduate students. Now, why host an event if it's not going to benefit anybody? If a non-undergraduate student attends an event by a student organization on campus, they are bound to get a benefit. However, according to the policy proposed as it is now, that benefit, whether learning, whether having a nice social experience, learning how to dance, whatever it may be, the request can be denied because that learning how to dance is interpreted as a benefit that USG should not be paying for. And that I do not think is fair. This amendment says explicitly that funding requests should not financially or materially benefit non-undergraduate students. And I think that is an important distinction to make. I agree that our funding should not financially or materially benefit non-undergrad students, but to turn around and say we cannot fund something because a small portion of non-undergraduate students attend and may learn how to dance, that is unfair. So I encourage you all to support this amendment. Thank you, and thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Dr.
I think I already spoke about this in my last point. I think this is a little bit redundant at this point. Policies are not supposed to go in depth. They are to get, it's supposed to be concise. And I think that the line item that we have now for 3.19.1 is enough, and that it clarifies the point that it expects that primarily benefit non-undergraduate students will not be funded. I think that if we add more to this, it's going to get confusing for other students as well.
Alright. Yeah, we're done. We're going to move into a vote on this amendment as it stands. All in favor of this amendment, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay.
Nay.
Any abstentions? In the opinion of the chair, the nays have it. The motion fails. Now we're going to move back into consideration of the question as a whole. I'm going to use my power to set limits on debate to cap the speakers list at these last two votes, and then we'll move into a vote on the policies as a whole. I want to make sure we do. So, you're already on the list.
Point is present, so you're not entertaining any more motions to amend.
I will not be. Actually, I believe on the list is Dr. You've got 2 minutes.
Just my concluding point, I really appreciate all this debate and all the effort that Senator Sacramento has put into his amendments, as well as the UConn Swing and Blues that are here and present. I appreciate you. Thank you for being here. Just my last point about what Senator Sacramento said about the timeline and about this not being as accessible to students. Just to make it clear, students were given a notification before Thanksgiving that new policies were going to be proposed this week. And because of Thanksgiving, I wasn't able to speak to the person who sends out the emails, and the earliest we could do so was Monday. With that being said, there were groups that run the entire thing that came to the town hall, and that was open for everyone. We don't have to have a town hall. We do it to get voices and to be as transparent as possible. So in my opinion, this was as accessible to students as possible. If they weren't able to come to the town hall, I also gave them a feedback form as well. So there are obviously students who are not going to read it. 17 pages is long. People have more to do. So these changes, it's not an excuse for student groups to make that this was that this came on them in a short time. They did have enough time to look over, but also provide feedback. So that's just my input on this. I yield back to the chair.
Thank you. The last person to be recognized will be Senator Moore.
Speaker, I'd like to yield my time to the chair.
I just appreciate it. All right. We will now move into a vote on the policies as presented to us. All those in favor of the policies, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay.
Nay.
Any abstentions? In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, the motion carries. job, everyone. All right. Now we'll move into a motion regarding the nomination of Justin Lavoie to the Election Oversight Committee Chair. First goes to Senator Nenadal, second goes to Chairperson Rapids. I will yield to the President to speak on behalf.
Hello everyone, so as you know, we've been talking about EOC and becoming going back and forth with leadership and how we can grow the committee. And so, as many of you know, our former EOC chair, Carol, unfortunately resigned. And so for break, we had to search for a new EOC chair. So my nominee is Justin Lavoie. So Justin has been in USG since 2014, so he is a veteran. He served on funding board for 2 years when it was a standing committee, and he served as vice chair of the academic affairs committee as well, and he served as the VP chief of staff briefly before he took a year off. And he has served on various university committees as well, so he's very well versed in how USG runs and elections specifically as well. And so I thought it would be a great idea to bring him back and have him serve as well.
Would the nominee accept the nomination?
I do.
All right. Any questions, points, or motions for the nominee?
The chair will be willing to entertain a motion to allow the nominee to speak a bit. We've heard a lot about the importance of this role, and I still have to hear what his plans are for the role, along with what he can do.
I won't even entertain the motion. I'll just yield to.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah.
So, as you guys all know, I got the notice of this position really recently. Actually got the ball rolling really quickly, really efficiently. We got in basically the candidate questionnaire form that has to be filled out. We have an extension on that, but we got that in before. We got that in last night, and we were able to actually reform our campaign packets a little bit, our election packets a little bit. And I'll be talking to you guys about that in just a minute. Moving forward, I know that contact with constituents and people who are trying to run is a huge issue. Looking back, everyone has gotten an email telling them what was going on. I think that's huge. Everyone needs to know what's going on. Also, I'll be looking for input from anyone that's in the student or outside of it for changes to election policy. I'm willing to look at everything. I don't mind. So let me know what you want to work on.
Thank you. Are there any other discussion on the nominee? Seeing none, we'll move into a vote. This vote requires a 2/3 majority. All those in favor of confirming the new EOC chair, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Any abstentions? Opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, motion carries. Congratulations. Next item on the agenda is a motion regarding the 2019 spring election pact. The motion goes to Douglas, second goes to Moore. I will yield to the new EOC chair so he may speak on behalf of this pact.
So as you guys are all senators, you are well aware that we have an election packet. You've all had to read it. It's part of your requirements. So we only made a few changes. We updated the seat counts to make sure those are accurate. We went through, and if you just scroll down a little bit, the only change we made from the previous one, everything is in the bylaws, did not change. It's all copy-pasted. But instead of copy-pasting our entire election rules, we actually have a link on there. You can't copy-paste it, but you just type that into your Go there, and that's where you're going to find our election policies and rules for campaigning. Go there, simple as that. The hyperlinks are still there. Didn't change anything. No break.
Any points of discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we'll move into a vote. All those in favor of a motion to approve the motion regarding the 2019 spring election packet, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Any abstentions? Being the ayes have it, motion carries. So technically, we should be moving back into reports, but I have a proposal for you all. We spent a lot of time here tonight doing a lot of things, and what I would recommend, if the body would consent to this, is I will ask every member who will be giving reports to write up a report and send it in to me. I will then send those reports to all of you, so you may check them, including with emails, So that way you can ask any questions to the members who are for it, if you so choose. It's body consensus. I'd like to do this. Does anyone object? Yeah, there is no objections and the motion carries. All right. So we're going to move into discussion. I believe, Vice President? Okay, yeah. Any more points of discussion? If it's an announcement, you can.
Yeah.
Okay, do it. Seeing there's no discussion, we'll move into announcements. I believe the USC chair.
So I do have one announcement if anyone's interested. I'm serving on the USC board. Currently, under the current requirements, you would not be able to run the USG election. That's something you have to be aware of. But you just send an email to me if it's something you are interested in. Most likely start that up next semester. No point in stressing about that.
Hang on, actually, we have a question from.
It came to my attention during the last time we debated EOC legislation that a number of senators have already submitted letters of intent. Do you intend on voiding those and accepting new ones, or?
I actually saw those. I just got access to the email yesterday. I didn't have time to email anyone in that short time frame, but I actually was going to go through and email them all back. I saw they're all unopened, so I intend on emailing you back and seeing the current state of issues.
Okay, I actually was going through the minutes of the past two Senates, and I realized that I had reported back to exec and not the general body on the current situation with the letter, the environmental letter. For those of you that don't know, there was a letter that was created to the President's Search Committee that was basically saying that students want environmental sustainability to be a central point of the framework of the committee, and it's actually been sent to all the board of trustees members and to the committee itself. So USG has done a good job on that, just up to you guys.
The External Affairs Committee on December 7th, which should be our last meeting, but will not be our last meeting, we will be having a potluck lunch with members of our committee. I will be sending out a form shortly to our members if they can attend on December 7th at 3 p.m. and what they want to bring, whether it's refreshments or food items like cookies or eggnog or whatnot. Everyone is welcome to come, but that will be next Friday at 3 p.m. Thank you.
Okay, so we have two major events happening in the next 2 weeks, and you're not going to hear about this. Actually, you're going to hear about it, but if you don't open your emails, you're going to hear about it from me right now. Tampon Time is happening next Tuesday from 4 to 6. We are giving away free shirts, and we would like all of you to at least let your friends know about the event. If you have any friends that would like to participate in a campaign, we are taking photos this weekend. I would prefer women or female identifying individuals to be part of the campaign. We will share them on social media, and I hope that you will all relay those images to your friends. Next Friday, Academic Affairs will be having their final starter packs. They'll be given out in front of the library from 12 to 2 p.m. I also expect all of you to inform your friends about these events. And you can choose to not open emails from me, but I expect that you all share these events with your friends and your peers. In addition, the Facebook group is going to be used again. And if you are not part of the Facebook group, or you have friends that are USG senators or committee members or et cetera that are not part of those groups, I would like to let them know that, I would like to have you tell them that they should join the Facebook group, and they can only do so if they submit their UConn email address on the page before. It is a regulated Facebook group, so you cannot join the group unless you are a UConn email holder. Any other questions to that? Oh yeah, so lots of announcements, sorry, it's like the last one. Next semester we are starting the New York Times free subscription. All students that are undergraduates with an undergraduate email will be able to acquire this subscription to the New York Times for free. That being said, we are starting enrollment for this today. I have yet to come up with a dramatic buy or sell post and postpone it until tomorrow for various reasons. you can inform all of your peers again about the free subscription. There is a Google form that you have to fill out and submit your email address on, and that is the only way you'll be able to acquire email access to the New York Times starting the 3rd week on that Monday of the spring semester. Are there any other questions, things that people think I should mention? I have lots of things that cool. If you have any questions, you can email me.
All right, you can already see me moving, so you already know what the announcement is. Can anyone guess what tomorrow is?
Your birthday?
Thank you, Delani. Again, it is game night, which is much better than my birthday. I do have some sad news, though. I know that this joke is getting really old, so if anyone has better jokes for this announcement, please let me know. Please, it's getting really old. Now,
speak.
It is 7 o'clock in the SOC, so I want everyone who can go to show up. Thank you.
For this quick update on UConn, there was supposed to be a meeting today for the team, and we'll be having people postpone until later. And all new senators, if you haven't heard already, UConn is something we're doing this year for USG, and if you want to join, just contact me or our parliamentarian.
All right. I'm going to end it with the final 2 announcements. One is a more important one. We'll in a second. So first and foremost, our parliamentarian, Fiorella Contreras, she could not be here tonight, but she's the one who oversees all senator attendance to office hours and assignments to committee. Given now this body is approaching 60 members, that is a significant task, and she feels she would struggle to do this on her own. To that end, we are once again opening up applications for deputy speaker to be deputy speaker. This deputy speaker would be purely serving as an assistant to the parliamentarian to make sure that all of her duties are undertaken. Deputy Speaker Douglas would still be my second, but the new deputy speaker would be the Fiorella Contreras. So look out for that in the coming days. Second announcement, much more fun. Next week at caucus on December 5th, we're having a holiday party. There's going to be food. There's going to be all sorts of good stuff. Email went out about that today. Keep an eye on it. So I will give final announcement just in case.
Hey guys, sorry, I'm going to make this very quick. I just have some very good news that came in very recently. The Director of Dining Services, Dennis Pierce, has just got out of a meeting with one of our zero waste representatives, and the student union is going to be replacing plastic bags with paper bags for a 5-cent fee, which is kind of awesome. So yeah, just want to let you know.
With that, I will motion to adjourn by unanimous consent at 9:51 p.m. Any objections? Seeing none, we will adjourn.